in the post-COVID world. The theme would include combating crisis, accepting vaccines, and living together in the world. We all have seen that in past 1.5 years, there are certain new proverbs which have come up. One of them is, negative is the new positive. Yes, this proverb is now prevailing. There is another proverb which has come up, which means that the distance is the new reverence. If you want to pay reverence to somebody, you need to be physically apart from him and at a specified distance from an individual. This COVID-19 has come up with loads of challenges. And the challenges for the education are too many. Because the classes, they got converted from room to Zoom. The assessments, they got converted from pen and paper. Rather, from class, they went on to the glass. Meaning thereby that the assessment, that the screen supremacy has been brought in as a new normal. Today's international conference is to build a common world and also a means of reconciling with the adversities and marching ahead together. We have seen how this health crisis has changed the world. It was heartwarming to see that COVID brought the education world together. Distance may be the new reverence in the physical world, but the entire education fraternity, entire academic fraternity came together to build upon solutions. And not even a single day passed by when a student was not hand-holded. The knowledge exchange, the translation of knowing, understanding, and believing continued and was not even interrupted for a single day. That was the power of joining of academia together. Today, in this conference, we have acclaimed academicians from all across the world. Let me welcome all the panelists. We have the privilege of having Dr. Stacey Farway, Pro-Vice Chancellor, International, La Trobe University from Australia. We welcome you. We have the benign presence of Professor Lawrence Pratchett, Pro-Vice Chancellor, Students, Partnerships and International, University of Canberra, Australia. We have with us Professor Seth Kunin, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Curtin University, Australia. We are overwhelmed with the benign presence of Mr. James Aldridge, Vice Provost, International, Lakehead University, Canada. We have with us Professor Loyos Semayo, Vice Rector of Academic Affairs, European University, Cyprus. Ms. Neha Grover, the Director, Education, Australian Trade and Investment Commission, Austrade India, was to join us, but because of ill health, she is unable to make it, but her views are going to be included during the proceedings. We have with us Professor Leigh Robinson, Pro-Vice Chancellor, Cardiff Metropolitan University, United Kingdom. We are privileged to have Mr. Jack Civillan, the Director, English Language Programs, University of Pennsylvania, USA. We have with us Dr. Tony Travagolin, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Global Engagement and Partnerships, the University of Newcastle, Australia. We have with us Professor Cillian Ryan, Pro-Vice Chancellor, International, Nottingham Trent University, United Kingdom. We are more than happy to welcome Dr. Sue Zimmerman, Provost, State University of New York, Cobleskill, USA. We are delighted to have with us Ms. Bayoak Chadwick, Associate Vice President, International and Chief Executive Officer, Global Operations, Thomson River University, Canada. We are privileged to have with us the Chancellor, lovely Professional University, Sri Ashok Mittalji. Sir, we welcome you to this conference. We'll be very soon joined by a humanitarian, by a literarian, by somebody who started his career and profession as a teacher and then rose to become the Minister of Education of the largest democracy in the world. We'll be welcoming Sri Ramesh Pokhriyalji Nishank very soon to this conference. Till then, let me talk about the thematic highlights of this conference. During this conference, in the panel discussion, we'll be talking about the international higher education landscape, because we have got the august and acclaimed academicians from all across the world. We'll be talking about the international higher education. What would be the world beyond COVID, during COVID-19 era? I'll call it as an era. We'll be talking about what were the biggest setbacks in the international higher education, which were actually imposed by the spread of COVID-19. We'll be talking about what kind of policies, what kind of student immigration, what effects on student immigration COVID-19 had. We'll be delving deep into untapped potential of digital on international education. We'll be surely coming up with the solutions for the international policymakers and educators. By all these panel discussions, we'll be coming up with certain pointers for the policymakers worldwide, so that not in just these times of COVID-19, education and academia is ready for any kind of unprecedented times created by any kind of such clinical or any kind of natural hazard. We have brought together a blend of forward-thinking educators to bring a deeper understanding of the present-day education. The conference aims to predict a scenario for the world beyond, a world which will remember the fear, but will surely be armed with the vaccine, and how international educators will have to be on the edge, will have to be on the run, will have to be meeting the dynamic changes of the nature. How would they create, how would they curate policies so that the students get the maximum benefit, even though the distance is the new reverence, even though remoteness is the biggest practice which we are practicing today. Still, there'll always be a way. Still, if people, if academicians sit together, talk about their best practices, their ways, their means, their measures, which they have already taken, we can really build a pointer to the entire world that, see, this is the way education prepared itself, is doing itself, and is going to do it in times to come. We are not stoppables. As academicians, as educationists, we are surely not stoppables. And we, today in this conference, will try to ensemble the thoughts, the practices, the policies, and the procedures for fighting the present stint of COVID-19, as well as deciding on how to take up the challenges beyond COVID-19. This dialogue aims to bring forward the thoughts of the world education leaders and give rudder to the international higher education. With the vaccinations being developed, the COVID cycle is tending to come to full circle, and we are looking forward to settling into a newer world. We all know that we are living into a new normal, and this new normal defines the new sense, new essence new ways, new means of discovering education in the new domain. मैं आपका अभिनंदन करता हूं, वंदन करता हूं हमारे माननीय शिक्षा मंत्री जी श्री रमेश पोखरियाल निशंक जी हमारे बीच उपस्थित हो चुके हैं। मैं पुनः आपका अभिनंदन वंदन करता हूं और आपका ऐसा मार्गदर्शन, आपका ऐसा सानिध्य हमें हमेशा हमेशा मिलता रहे, ऐसी आशा करता हूं। मैं लवली परिवार की तरफ से आपको कोटि कोटि धन्यवाद देता हूं कि आपने अपना समय निकालकर हमारी आज की इस अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगोष्ठी में Now let me begin the proceedings of the day. Sir, Minister Sir, we have acclaimed academicians from all across the world. Let me introduce them to you for a while and then we'll begin the proceedings. We have Dr. Stacey Farway, the Pro Vice Chancellor, International, La Trobe University, Australia. We've got Professor Lawrence Pratchett, Pro Vice Chancellor, Students Partnership and International, University of Canberra, Australia. We are joined by Professor Seth Kunin, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Curtin University, Australia. We have with us Mr. James Aldridge, Vice Provost, International, Lakehead University, Canada. We have with us Professor Loyes Simoeo, Vice Director of Academic Affairs, European University from Cyprus. We have Professor Leigh Robinson, Pro Vice Chancellor, Cardiff Metropolitan University, United Kingdom. We are joined by Mr. Jack Sullivan, Director, English Language Programs, University of Pennsylvania, United States of America. We have with us Dr. Tony Travaglin, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Global Engagement and Partnerships, the University of Newcastle, Australia. We have with us Professor Cecilia Ryan, Pro Vice Chancellor, International, Nottingham Trent University, UK. We have with us Dr. Sue Zimmerman, Provost, State University of New York, Cobleskill, USA. And we are joined by Ms. Bahua Chadwick, Associate Vice President, International, and Chief Executive Officer, Global Operations, Thomson Rivers University, Canada. And we have with us our beloved Chancellor, Shri Ashok Mittal ji, joining along with you as in this conference, international conference. एक सामान्य दुनिया के निर्माण का मतलब प्रतिकूलताओं के साथ सामंजस्य स्थापित करना और एक साथ आगे बढ़ना है। हमने देखा है कि कैसे एक स्वास्थ्य संकट इतिहास के पाठ्यक्रमों को बदल सकता है। यह देखकर हार्दिक खुशी होती है कि कोविड ने भले ही दुनिया को अलग कर दिया हो, पर विश्व शिक्षा को एक साथ लाया है। यह सराहनीय है कि दुनिया भर की संस्थाओं और सरकारों ने स्थानीय स्तर पर विश्व स्तर की शिक्षा प्रदान करने के लिए निष्पक्ष रूप से काम किया है। आदरणीय मंत्री महोदय, आज की सम्मेलन की मुख्य विशेषताएं हैं, हम जिन पर चर्चा करेंगे। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय उच्च शिक्षा का परिदृश्य, अंतर्राष्ट्रीय उच्च शिक्षा कोविड-19 के उपरांत, कोविड-19 के दौरान अंतर्राष्ट्रीय उच्च शिक्षा में विसंगतियां, नीतियां और छात्र प्रवास पर भी चर्चा की जाएगी। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा के लिए डिजिटल की अप्रयुक्तता और क्षमता पर भी विचार किए जाएंगे। मैं आपका पुनः आभारी हूं और अभिनंदन करता हूं, वंदन करता हूं माननीय मंत्री महोदय। When someone says it can't be done, he knocks the tea off. When someone says it's impossible, he makes I am disappear, making it possible, carrying the torch and baton of transforming education. His outcome-focused approach has made the mark in escalation of education standards in the country. His success mantra lies in persistent efforts taken with zeal, truthfulness, and commitment. May I request Shri Ashok Mittal ji, Chancellor, Lovely Professional University, to deliver the inaugural address, please. Sir.
Namaskar. In India, we say namaskar, which takes care of every time zone. But as we are here, our people from abroad, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because we have people from this part of the world as well as to that part of the world. I welcome you all. I welcome you all to this very conference, which has been organized by lovely professional university with the blessings of Honorable Minister, Honorable Union Minister of Education, Government of India. Thank you very much, sir, to make this happen. First of all, it is my proud privilege to welcome our Honorable Union Minister of Education, Government of India, Shri Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank ji. Thank you very much, sir. I know you were genuinely, you're always busy, but today you were very busy because there was a meeting with the higher authorities today. But you kept your word and you came here to address us, to guide us, to bless us. आप हमें आशीर्वाद देने आए हैं हम सबको, तो मैं इसके लिए आपका तहे दिल से लवली परिवार, एलपी परिवार की तरफ से और इस संगोष्ठी के जो आयोजकों की तरफ से धन्यवाद करना चाहूंगा. थैंक यू, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर. श्री निशंक जी के बारे में कुछ भी कहना एक किसी भी किताब लिखने से कम नहीं होगा. It is very difficult to describe our Honorable Minister of Education. He is soft-hearted person, such a wonderful person, nice person. Whosoever meets him becomes his for his life or her life. And I'm lucky that we could find blessings or with him. He is a writer. He has written hundreds of books, not 1, 2, 3, hundreds of books. And books in all categories, in poetry, in drama, in article shape, in all categories he has written books. For education, for students, he's a wonderful writer and his books have been published almost in all Indian languages and many languages abroad and part of curricula in many universities abroad. Of course, it is in India also, but abroad, I think, which tells about the credibility and the quality of the books he writes. He is a poet, a wonderful poet in Hindi, and we do memorize his words in poem, which definitely I will share later on. He is an educator. Not because he is the Education Minister of India, he is educator because he takes care of education before even becoming Education Minister of India. And he spreads education in his personal capacity too. He is an administrator. He had been Chief Minister of Uttarakhand. And of course, he is now Union Minister of Education, and he had been ministers in various state governments at different times. He is a wonderful administrator. And above all, he is a true statesman. He is not a politician. Maybe technically, but practically he is a true statesman. So thank you very much that you are guiding us and guiding the Ministry of Education in the Government of India. We know pandemic is a big crisis, and which we never witnessed earlier. It sent shockwave throughout the global economy. People are worried about their lives as well as their livelihoods. Policymakers all over the world are looking for ways to contain the spread of virus while limiting the economic fallout. And this particular conference is going to talk about this. So I will not detail it out. But when it is a pandemic came in India, the lockdown was announced on 25th of March last year. And friends, all of us must appreciate that our Honorable Minister made it sure that no child should go unattended, and if he stays at home, he should not stay at home without studying. Within 3 days, I think it's a record in the world. Within 3 days, he announced major policy reforms, not only announced, but executed it. All colleges, all universities, all schools were allowed to start online education and teach students via online mode, staying though they are staying at their home. Friends, not only the policy was announced, not only execution had started, the government ensured there are softwares are available, there are hardwares are available, and there is sufficient bandwidth to carry to the students at home. And fourth day, everything was running. Every student was studying at home. And he regularly coming to different conferences by the different, of course, social media mode, motivated students community, motivated teaching community, motivated all of us. Okay, this is the time, but we have to make the best of this time. We have to make the best of this opportunity, which is not good, but we have to make it. And we all educators, all teaching community were started teaching in online mode, though they were not having any formal training for that. Neither students were having nor teachers were having. But with his motivation and his online teaching, teachers how to teach. Fourth day, everything was normal, and at 30 crore, 300 million, 300 million students were studying while they were at home during this pandemic from day 4. I think it deserves a big applause by all of us, and which shows the credit about the administrative competence of our honorable minister. Friends, this lockdown definitely was not a good thing to happen, but it gave us very opportunity. And friends, when this problem was continuing and the minister was there to solve it and was solving it very nicely, on July end, means just after 3 months of this pandemic, he brought out one of the largest policy, not in terms of paper, one of the largest consulted policy document in education in India. NEP, National Education Policy. National Education Policy was formally announced in the July end by our Honorable Minister, which brought sweeping changes in the education sector in this country, which were due for last many decades. And friends, everyone appreciated this policy. Entire country, all segments, all political parties, whether in power or not in power, all academicians, all laboratories, all research scholars, and of course, all academicians of the world, they appreciated the policy that they have never seen such a document which takes care of everyone without a single objection to that. I think again, this is the leadership of our honorable minister that he could do it. And consultative process around 100 million means 10 crore people were consulted before he released this document. That was the spread of the width of this document as far as the consultation part is concerned. And in that document, he took care of each and everything. Whether quality education, of course, that was required. More than that, the skills in the students. Skills not to get job, but skills to do business also, to be an entrepreneur also, to be a researcher also, to be a good sports person also. He made it sure that all kind of skills are embedded in the student community, whether he's a school student, whether he's a college student, or whether he's a university student. And he made it sure everything is embedded in the. And friends, again, announcement doesn't do anything. From next very day, the execution started. Next very day, execution started, and I'm happy to share now. You all know we are seeing from the at the back of Ministry of Education. Before that, it was Ministry of Human Resource Development. First, the name was changed from HRD to Ministry of Education. Again, it tells the commitment that the government and commitment of our honorable minister to make the things happen. And at LPU, of course, I'm not talking much about LPU. We are so happy and excited after this policy and working in that direction, and have already made sweeping changes in our curricula, in our delivery mechanism, in our examination system, in our collaboration with research lab, with the international universities. We have already started doing that, and we are getting very rich dividends because of that. Friends, when there is a problem, there are opportunities. I do remember we are facing this pandemic, and the biggest relief which could have come was the vaccination, vaccine. And our Honorable Prime Minister, I do remember the words of our Honorable Prime Minister when he came to lovely professional university in person in January 2019. I mean, just 1 year before this pandemic arrived, he came to LPU, and he gave a new slogan to this country. I think we all know, India, there was a slogan called Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, which was given by our Honorable Prime Minister late Shri Shastri ji, and our Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, Honorable late Prime Minister ji, added Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, he added Jai Vigyan. And our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, when he came to LPU, he added one more word in this, Jai Anusandhan. And he announced and I'm happy and we are delighted that this was done at LPU campus. LPU के प्रांगण में उन्होंने ये अनाउंसमेंट की थी कि अब इस स्लोगन में जय जवान, जय किसान, जय विज्ञान, जय अनुसंधान होगा। और उन्होंने ये कर दिखाया, भारत सरकार के मंत्रालय, एजुकेशन मंत्रालय ने कर दिखाया कि दुनिया की वैक्सीन हमने भारत में अनुसंधान की, और ये एजुकेशन सेक्टर और रिसर्च सेक्टर के सहयोग से हुआ, जिसके लिए हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी बधाई के पात्र हैं, और हमारे ऑनरेबल मिनिस्टर की जिन्होंने हम सबको मोटिवेट किया एजुकेशन सेक्टर को कि नहीं, नॉट ओनली इन एजुकेशन, वी हैव टू डू समथिंग ग्रेट इन रिसर्च आल्सो। और एंड टुडे द half of the world is getting vaccine from India. And of course, we do know our Prime Minister is getting phone calls from Prime Minister of Canada and so many other Prime Ministers to supply the vaccine to their country. This shows the strength of our education sector and research sector and the commitment of our Honorable Prime Minister and our Honorable Union Education Minister. Friends, I think that's a big thing for me or for all Indian citizens, that we feel proud that we are being guided by Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, as far as the entire country is concerned, and education sector, we are guided by Honorable Minister of Education Shri Nishank ji, and who is guiding us to take education to forward. And in education, of course, because I'm with international dignitaries, one of the major agenda of our government is that we are to internationalize education and do research, do collaborative things with the international universities. And why? And I think there's a reason this conference is being organized. I think the more will be said by our Honorable Minister. Thank you very much for joining us, all my friends from abroad. And मैं और भारत के शिक्षा मंत्री का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करूंगा कि उन्होंने इतना बड़ी मीटिंग छोड़कर हमारे साथ शामिल हुए। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर, हम आपके आभारी हैं, कृतज्ञ हैं कि आपका हमें आशीर्वाद, ब्लेसिंग्स हमेशा मिलती रहती है। थैंक यू वेरी मच, धन्यवाद। आवाज नहीं आ रही।
Both Honorable Prime Minister, sir, and the Minister of Education, and we as academicians ensure the Honorable Minister that we'll leave no stone unturned to make your dreams come true, sir. We make it a pledge. So, as Chancellor was talking about, that he is basically an educator, a literarian, a writer, and a poet. So I'll recite a very recent poem, a part of a very recent poem of Shri Nishank ji, with your kind permission, sir, and would try to translate it as well with whatever little I know. He says, छोड़ो पुरानी वो बेबस कहानी, छोड़ो पुरानी वो बेबस कहानी, शुरू कर खुशी से नई जिंदगानी। छोड़ो पुरानी वो बेबस कहानी, शुरू कर खुशी से नई जिंदगानी। मौसम सुहाना धरा पर आया है, बदली है तरवर ने प्राचीन काया है। जीवन की पहली किरण बनी सुहानी, छोड़ो पुरानी वो बेबस कहानी, शुरू कर खुशी से नई जिंदगानी। This is from his one of the poems with the title Chodo Bebas Kahani, and he's trying to actually let people look to the new forms of energy which are around you, the new stories, the positive stories which are around you, and to do away with the helplessness, be it COVID, be it anything. We as humans will always be positive, positive and positive. श्री डॉक्टर रमेश पोखरियाल निशंक जी, माननीय केंद्रीय शिक्षा मंत्री, भारत सरकार, एक लोकहितकारी, जननायक, सामाजिक कार्यकर्ता, साहित्यकार और भारतीय राजनेता हैं। वो कई मंत्री पदों पर अपने गृह राज्य में रह चुके हैं और उन्होंने मुख्यमंत्री पद भी उत्तराखंड राज्य का निर्वहन किया है। वो एक लेखक, साहित्यकार, कवि, राष्ट्रवाद और पर्यावरण पर संवेदनशील विचारक के रूप में जाने जाते हैं। उन्होंने 75 से अधिक कविताएं, उपन्यास, खंड, लघु कथाएं, स्मरण, बच्चों की कहानियां और किताबों की रचना की है, जो भारत सहित संपूर्ण विश्व में 10 से भी अधिक भाषाओं में प्रकाशित हो चुके हैं। उनकी रचनाओं पर 30 शोध और 3 डीलिट पूरे हो चुके हैं। टू मेक अवेयर दैट द काइंड ऑफ वर्क ही हैज रिटन, more than 30 research has been done on those work and 3 Doctor of Literatures have been awarded on this work. He has been awarded by loads and loads of accolades. Abhi हाल ही में नई शिक्षा नीति, as the Chancellor Sir was talking about, the National Education Policy, because that policy talks rigorously and very atomically about early childhood care education, no rigid separation of art and science, which nobody thinks throughout the globe, vocational and skill focus, and on top of all, credit transfer and academic bank of credit was something which was crafted, curated, and now being implemented throughout the country. आदरणीय मंत्री जी, मैं आपसे निवेदन करूंगा, प्रार्थना करूंगा कि वो हम सबका मार्गदर्शन करें, आशीर्वाद दें और आशीष दें। आदरणीय मंत्री महोदय।
इस महत्वपूर्ण अवसर पर मैं देश और दुनिया के सभी शिक्षाविदों का अभिनंदन कर रहा हूं। लवली यूनिवर्सिटी द्वारा कोविड की इस दुनिया में इस अंतर्राष्ट्रीय उच्च शिक्षा के सम्मेलन को जो आयोजित किया गया है, मैं विशेष करके इस परिवार को, लवली यूनिवर्सिटी को, इस अच्छे काम के लिए, जो ऐसे वक्त पर जब चुनौती भरा समय है, तब पूरी दुनिया के शिक्षाविदों को एक मंच पर ला करके उच्च शिक्षा के उन्नयन की दिशा में और जो वर्तमान चुनौती है उसका मुकाबला करने की दिशा में जो ये बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण सम्मेलन आयोजित किया गया है, इसके लिए मैं उनको बहुत बहुत साधुवाद देना चाहता हूँ। विशेष करके इस संस्थान के, इस यूनिवर्सिटी के जो आयामी यूनिवर्सिटी है, उसके यशस्वी चांसलर श्री अशोक मित्तल जी को मैं विशेष करके इस काम के लिए उनको, उनकी पूरी टीम को बधाई और शुभकामना देना चाहता हूँ। इस अवसर पर हमारे बीच पूरी दुनिया से तमाम लोग शिक्षाविद जुड़े हैं ऑस्ट्रेलिया से डॉक्टर स्टेसी फारवे उप कुलाधिपति हैं। ऑस्ट्रेलिया से ही प्रोफेसर लॉरेंस प्राचीत उप कुलाधिपति हैं यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ काम्बेरा। ऑस्ट्रेलिया से ही मिस नेहा ग्रोवर निदेशक जो शिक्षा ऑस्ट्रेलियाई व्यापार और बचत आयोग की। प्रोफेसर सेठ कुनिन साहेब को कुलाधिपति हैं कर्टिन यूनिवर्सिटी ऑस्ट्रेलिया। मिस्टर जेम्स हैं वाइस प्रोवेस्ट अंतरराष्ट्रीय लेक हर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी कनाडा। प्रोफेसर लाइजोम वाइस रेक्टर ऑफ एकेडमिक अफेयर्स यूरोपियन यूनिवर्सिटी साइप्रस। प्रोफेसर लीग रोबिनसन प्रो वाइस चांसलर कार्डिफ यूनिवर्सिटी यूके। मिस्टर जैक सुलिवन ये यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ यूएसए से हैं। डॉक्टर टोडी यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ ऑस्ट्रेलिया। प्रोफेसर सिलिया रयान यूके। डॉक्टर सू जिमेरमन यूएसए। मिस हुआ चाद्विक इंटरनेशनल और मुख्य कार्याधिकारी ग्लोबल कनाडा यूनिवर्सिटी कनाडा। डॉक्टर संजय मोदी जी एग्जीक्यूटिव डीन लवली फैकल्टी ऑफ बिजनेस एंड आर्ट्स LPU। डॉक्टर लविराज गुप्ता जी एग्जीक्यूटिव डीन लवली फैकल्टी ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी एंड साइंस लवली यूनिवर्सिटी। श्री अमन मित्तल जी अध्यक्ष डिवीजन ऑफ इंटरनेशनल अफेयर्स लवली यूनिवर्सिटी। और सभी संख्याएं सभी छात्र और पूरी दुनिया से शिक्षा के जगत से जुड़े सभी लोगों का इस अवसर पर मैं बहुत अभिनंदन कर रहा हूँ, स्वागत कर रहा हूँ। मैं समझता हूँ कि जब पूरी दुनिया कोविड की इस महामारी का सामना कर रही है तब ऐसे अवसर पर उच्च शिक्षा के इस परिवेश को और सुदृढ़ करने के लिए और इस चुनौती का मुकाबला करने के लिए जो लवली यूनिवर्सिटी के द्वारा ये बहुत महत्वपूर्ण कार्यक्रम रखा गया है। मैं एक बार फिर इस कार्यक्रम के लिए सबको धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूँ। और इस विश्वविद्यालय का इस समय में भारत के उच्च शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में सुदृढ़ता और दुनिया में उच्च शिक्षा में मानवीय दृष्टिकोण रख करके उसकी उत्कृष्टता के लिए किया गया ये काम निश्चित रूप में एक बहुत ऐतिहासिक काम है। मैं इस कैंपस में आया हूँ, लवली कैंपस में मैं गया हूँ। इसकी जो भव्यता है और विस्तृत जो परिसर है उसको देख करके जहाँ दुनिया के 50-60 से भी अधिक देशों के छात्र आज अपने अध्ययन का एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण गंतव्य बनाए हुए हैं, वो अपने आप में एक भव्यता लिए हुए है और वो उस बात को प्रदर्शित करता है कि ये जो भारत है वो पूरी दुनिया के लिए शुरू से ही एक ज्ञान विज्ञान अनुसंधान का एक आकर्षण गंतव्य रहा है। यहाँ तक्षशिला, नालंदा और विक्रमशिला जैसे विश्वविद्यालय रहे हैं जहाँ ज्ञान विज्ञान अनुसंधान और नवाचार में देश ने पूरी दुनिया के लोग आकर के अपने आचार व्यवहार संस्कार और जीवन दर्शन से लेकर के और नवाचार तक शोध और अनुसंधान के क्षेत्र में विभिन्न विधाओं को लेकर के यहाँ अध्ययन करने के लिए आते रहे हैं। और फिर मैं समझता हूँ कि पूरी दुनिया का ये आकर्षक गंतव्य शिक्षा का बन रहा है। ये मुझे खुशी है इस बात की। शैक्षणिक क्षेत्र को जब इस महामारी ने पूरी दुनिया को अपनी चपेट में लिया है तो स्वाभाविक ही है कि ये शिक्षा का क्षेत्र भी इस दिशा में अछूता नहीं रहा है। और भारत जैसा जो देश है, जो दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा लोकतांत्रिक देश है, जिसकी जनसंख्या 135 करोड़ के लगभग होती है और जहाँ शिक्षा का यदि भव्यता देखी जाए तो 1000 से भी अधिक जहाँ विश्वविद्यालय हैं, 50,000 के आसपास डिग्री कॉलेज हैं, जहाँ 15-16 लाख स्कूल हैं और केवल अध्यापकों की संख्या को देखा जाए तो 1 करोड़ 10 लाख से भी अधिक हैं। और कुल स्कूली और उच्च शिक्षा के छात्रों की संख्या देखी जाए तो लगभग 33 करोड़ के आसपास बनते हैं और उच्च शिक्षा के परिवेश को देखा जाए तो लगभग 3-3.5 करोड़ छात्र आज उच्च शिक्षा को प्राप्त कर रहे हैं। तो मैं ये समझता हूँ कि इतना व्यापक परिवेश इस देश का है और उसी व्यापकता में जिस तरीके से कोरोना ने अपनी मार को बढ़ाया है, तो स्वाभाविक है कि ये हमारे देश के सामने बहुत बड़ी चुनौती है। और मेरा मानना है कि जो ये सम्मेलन का विषय है, कोविड उपरांत विश्व में अंतर्राष्ट्रीय उच्च शिक्षा के अवसर, टीका की स्वीकार्यता, विश्वास साझा जीवन, इस विषय को विशेष रूप से वैश्विक महामारी के आलोक में दुनिया में गतिशील शिक्षा प्रणाली के संबंध में कई प्रकार से ये अपने में महत्व रखता है। और ये जो सम्मेलन है ये निश्चित रूप में अब जहां अंतर्राष्ट्रीय सीमाएं इस समय इस कोरोना काल में सब बंद हैं और लोग डरे हुए हैं, ऐसे वक्त में पूरी दुनिया को एक मंच पर शिक्षाविदों को लाना ये लवली यूनिवर्सिटी का प्रयास है, जो सराहनीय प्रयास है। मैं समझता हूं कि हमारे प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने कहा था कि इन जो कोविड-19 की चुनौतियों का डट कर के हम मुकाबला करेंगे, इनको अवसरों में तब्दील करेंगे, वो हमने किया। क्योंकि उन्होंने कहा कि जब कोई चुनौती होती है और उसका डट कर मुकाबला होता है तो अवसरों में तब्दील हो जाती है। और मुझे लगता है कि हिंदुस्तान जैसे देश ने इस समय उसको बखूबी तरीके से किया है। जब लोग अपने घरों में रहे होंगे तब हिंदुस्तान के मेरे अध्यापकों ने, मेरे छात्रों ने पूरी तरीके से शोध और अनुसंधान अपनी प्रयोगशालाओं में करके ये साबित कर दिया कि हाँ, वो कोविड का जट करके मुकाबला कर सकते हैं। और हिंदुस्तान ने इस प्रधानमंत्री जी के उस आत्मनिर्भर भारत की उस आह्वान को भी साबित किया है, जब हमारे IITs ने वेंटिलेटर तैयार किए, मास्क तैयार किए, पीपी किट तैयार किए, ड्रोन तैयार किए, तमाम प्रकार के जो उपकरण हैं, उन उपकरणों का बड़ी मात्रा में न केवल अब इस देश में, भारत में, बल्कि विश्व के तमाम देशों तक उसको पहुंचाने में हमारे देश के प्रधानमंत्री ने मानवीय जो विश्व बंधुत्व और वसुधैव कुटुंबकम की भावना से पूरी दुनिया के लोगों को उसको परोसा है, दिया है, अपना उनके दुख दर्द को बांटने का भी काम किया। और यही कारण है कि यहाँ पर जो शोध और अनुसंधान की दिशा में एक नहीं तो 2 वैक्सीन इस देश ने तैयार किए। और अभी आपको लगता होगा कि किस तरीके से जो युक्ति पोर्टल को आप यदि उसका विजिट करेंगे तो आपको लगता होगा कि हमारे तमाम इन संस्थानों ने, इन विश्वविद्यालयों ने, IITs ने, NITs ने, आईसर ने, हमारे IIM इत्यादि और ये जो तमाम हमारे विश्वविद्यालय हैं, श्रेष्ठ संस्थान है, उन्होंने एक से बढ़कर एक अनुसंधान इसी क्षेत्र में किए। ये छोटी बात नहीं, ये बहुत बड़ी बात है। और ऐसे अवसर पर जब कोरोना के इस जो महान संकट से गुजर रही है पूरी दुनिया, ऐसे अवसर पर भारत जैसे देश ने बहुत ताकत के साथ अपने शिक्षा व्यवस्था को सुदृढ़ रखा है। कोई सोच नहीं सकता जब दुनिया के विकसित देशों ने, छोटे छोटे देशों ने भी अपने को एक साल पीछे कर दिया हो, ऐसे वक्त में भी हिंदुस्तान ने अपने बच्चों के साथ खड़े होकर के समय पर परीक्षा करवाई, समय पर रिजल्ट घोषित किया, नीट की परीक्षा कराई, JEE की परीक्षा कराई। नीट की दुनिया की कोरोना काल की सबसे बड़ी परीक्षा सफलतापूर्वक संपन्न कराने में हम सफल रहे हैं। और मैं समझता हूं कि ये इतना बड़ा तंत्र घरों को ही स्कूलों में परिवर्तित कर देना और ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन के माध्यम से पूरा शिक्षक और अभिभावक इन दोनों के बीच बेहतर समन्वय करना, यह अपने आप में पूरी दुनिया के लिए एक अद्भुत उदाहरण है। और इसीलिए यूनेस्को की जो DG हैं, अभी कुछ दिन पहले जब मेरी उनके साथ वर्चुअल मीटिंग हुई तो उन्होंने कहा कि ये कोरोना काल में हिंदुस्तान ने जो शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में काम किया है वो दुनिया के लिए एक उदाहरण प्रस्तुत किया है। उन्होंने हमारी जो नई शिक्षा नीति जो हम लाए हैं NEP 2020, उसकी भी काफी प्रशंसा करके उसको विजनरी नीति करके बताया और उसकी आवश्यकता पूरी दुनिया के लिए उन्होंने महसूस की। और मैं समझता हूं, मैं जिस बात को शुरू से ही कहता था कि यूनेस्को के जो सतत विकास के लक्ष्य हैं वो हिंदुस्तान से होकर के ही गुजरते हैं। और जो हमारी नई शिक्षा नीति है, ये नई शिक्षा नीति ये भारत केंद्रित है। इसलिए भारत केंद्रित मैं कहता हूं कि हमने जीवन मूल्यों को भी श्रेष्ठता दी है। हमने मनुष्य को केवल मशीन नहीं बनाया, केवल उपकरण के रूप में उसको, मानव को संसाधन नहीं माना है। हमने मानव को भगवान की अप्रतिम कृति माना है, ऐसी कृति माना है जो ईश्वर की खूबसूरत कृति है और जिसको संसाधन नहीं बोला जा सकता है। और इसीलिए हम एक अच्छा नागरिक तैयार करने के लिए शिक्षा नीति को लाए हैं, लेकिन अच्छे नागरिक के साथ एक विश्व मानव की भी बात करने के लिए उसको विश्व मानव के रूप में भी तैयार करना चाहते हैं। क्योंकि जो हिंदुस्तान है वो वसुधैव कुटुंबकम की उस सिद्धांत पर हमेशा खड़ा रहा है, जिसने अयम निजा परोवेति गणना लघुचेतसाम उदार चरतानम, तो वसुधैव कुटुंबकम की बात की। वो पूरी दुनिया को अपना परिवार मानने वाला देश, और उस परिवार को भी सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामया। जब तक धरती पर कोई एक भी प्राणी दुखी होगा, कष्ट में होगा, तब तक मैं सुख का एहसास नहीं कर सकता। उसके कष्टों को दूर करने के लिए मैं खड़ा रहूंगा। इस कोरोना काल में भारत ने साबित किया है, उसको सिद्ध किया है, जहां मेरे नौजवान शिक्षक, शोधार्थी, हमारे लोग पूरी प्रयोगशालाओं में डट करके उन्होंने नए नए अनुसंधान करके पूरी दुनिया को दिखलाया भी है। और हमारे देश के प्रधानमंत्री जी ने तमाम दर्जनों देशों तक, ऐसे देशों को जिनको जरूरतें थी ऐसे संकट काल में, उनको विभिन्न प्रकार के उपकरण उपलब्ध कराइए, उनकी मदद की है। ये हमारी जो मेरे देश के प्रधानमंत्री जी ने पूरी दुनिया के सामने रखा है। और ऐसे समय में हम इस जो नई शिक्षा नीति लाए हैं, ये भारत केंद्रित, क्योंकि उन संस्कारों पर, विचारों पर, और वो भी भाषा, बहुभाषी मातृभाषा, क्योंकि यूनेस्को का भी ये हमेशा कहना है, जो अपनी मातृभाषा में सशक्तता, अपने प्रभाव तरीके से जो विचार प्रकट हो सकते हैं, वो किसी सीखी हुई और थोपी हुई भाषा में नहीं हो सकते हैं। इसलिए सभी भाषाओं का आदर होना चाहिए, लेकिन जो उसकी मातृभाषा है उसमें उसका पूरा विकास होना चाहिए। ये हम नई शिक्षा नीति में शुरू से लेकर के चल रहे हैं। और जहाँ भाषा की विविधता है, वहाँ विषयों की भी विविधता है। अब किसी भी नौजवान के लिए पूरे की पूरा मैदान खाली है, वो किसी भी विषय के साथ किसी भी विषय को ले सकता है जिस पे उसको लगता है कि नहीं, वो शिखर को प्राप्त कर सकता है, उसके अंदर वो ऊर्जा है कि उसको बाहर निकाल सकता है, उसके लिए पूरी छूट है। और ये जो बहुविषयक है, बहुभाषी है, वो आगे जा करके तमाम शोध और अनुसंधान के क्षेत्र में, और जब चाहे वो तब आ सकता है और जब चाहे वो जा सकता है। जो एकेडमिक बैंक ऑफ क्रेडिट हमने बनाया है कि यदि वो एक साल में भी विवशतावश उसको छोड़ना पड़ रहा है तो कोई बात नहीं, उसको सम्मान मिलेगा, उसको हताश निराश नहीं होना पड़ेगा। एक वर्ष में भी उसको सर्टिफिकेट मिल जाएगा। 2 वर्ष में यदि छोड़ करके जाने की परिस्थिति बनती है तो उसको 2 वर्ष में भी निराश होने की जरूरत नहीं। 2 वर्ष का उसको डिप्लोमा सम्मान मिलेगा और 3 वर्ष में उसको डिग्री मिलेगी। लेकिन यदि 1 वर्ष में उसकी स्थिति ठीक होती है या उसके मन में आता है उसको अभी 2-3 वर्ष बाद वो उसको फिर शुरू करना है जहां उसने छोड़ा था 1 वर्ष में या 2 वर्ष में, तो जहां वो उसने छोड़ा था वहां आ करके वहीं से वो शुरू कर सकता है। उसको एकेडमिक बैंक ऑफ क्रेडिट, तो चाबी, उस बैंक की चाबी उसके हाथ में होगी, वहीं से वो खोल करके उसको अपने भविष्य को वो संवार सकता है। तो मैं समझता हूं कि उसके आगे भी जो शोध और अनुसंधान के क्षेत्र में, हालांकि अभी भी हम दुनिया के साथ स्पार्क के तहत दुनिया के शीर्ष 128 विश्वविद्यालयों के साथ शोध और अनुसंधान कर रहे हैं, ऐसे स्ट्राइड में कर रहे हैं, इम्प्रिंट कर रहे हैं, इम्प्रेस कर रहे हैं, और विश्व के साथ ज्ञान में हम बाहर की फैकल्टियों को यहाँ ला रहे हैं और ज्ञान प्लस में हम यहाँ की फैकल्टियों को बाहर भेजने की बात कर रहे हैं। हमने दुनिया के टॉप 100 यूनिवर्सिटी को हिंदुस्तान की धरती पर आने का निमंत्रण दिया है और हमारे जो शीर्षतम संस्थान है वो भी दुनिया के साथ जाएंगे। एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म बनाना चाहते हैं हम जहां सारी दुनिया एक प्लेटफॉर्म में इस शिक्षा के उन्नयन की दिशा में अपना योगदान दे सकती है। और इसीलिए जो हमारी नई शिक्षा नीति है वो नेशनल भी है, वो इंटरनेशनल भी है, वो इम्पैक्टफुल भी है, इंटरैक्टिव भी है और वो इंक्लूसिव भी है, इनोवेटिव भी है। और यदि इस शिक्षा नीति को देखेंगे तो इसकी जो आधारशिला है वो इक्विटी, इक्वालिटी और एक्सेस के आधारशिला पर खड़ी है। बहुत खूबसूरत तरीके से हम टैलेंट को ढूंढेंगे भी, उस टैलेंट को विकास भी करेंगे और विकास ही नहीं करेंगे उसका विस्तार भी करेंगे। और उस टैलेंट को हमारे यहाँ से गड़बड़ है,
इंटरनेट स्पीड का इशू
था।
इसी वजह से थोड़ा सा ब्लरी से मिल जाता है।
अशोक जी, आप मुझको सुन पा रहे हैं?
हाँ जी, बिल्कुल आ रही है सर, मुझे आवाज आपकी बिल्कुल ठीक आ रही है सर।
ओके, तो मैं जिस बात को कह रहा था कि जो ये शिक्षा नीति, नई शिक्षा नीति है जिसको न केवल हमारे देश ने बल्कि पूरी दुनिया ने उसको उल्लास और उत्साह के साथ उसको बहुत अच्छा माना है। उस नई शिक्षा नीति के तहत हम शोध और अनुसंधान के क्षेत्र में भी बहुत आगे बढ़ना चाहते हैं, पूरी दुनिया के साथ मिलकर के आगे बढ़ना चाहते हैं। अभी नेशनल रिसर्च फाउंडेशन जो प्रधानमंत्री के प्रधान वैज्ञानिक सलाहकार की अध्यक्षता में होगा, वो शोध और अनुसंधान के लिए 5 वर्ष के लिए 50,000 करोड़ रुपए केवल और केवल शोध और अनुसंधान के लिए होगा। और जिसमें टैलेंट की अभी बात कर रहा था कि हम टैलेंट को ढूंढेंगे भी, उस टैलेंट को हम विकसित भी करेंगे और उसका विस्तार भी करेंगे और उस टैलेंट को हम उत्कृष्ट कोटि का कंटेंट देंगे और उस टैलेंट के साथ कंटेंट को जोड़ करके पेटेंट निकालेंगे, तो जाकर के हिंदुस्तान आत्मनिर्भर भारत के रूप में होगा। और जो हमारे देश के प्रधानमंत्री जी ने जिस बात को कहा है कि $5 ट्रिलियन की अर्थव्यवस्था चाहिए, इसीलिए हमने वोकेशनल जो एजुकेशन हम स्कूली शिक्षा से ला रहे हैं और वो भी इंटर्नशिप के साथ ला रहे हैं। और शायद पूरी दुनिया का पहला देश होगा जो आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस स्कूली शिक्षा से शुरू कर रहा है। और वो वोकेशनल जो एजुकेशन है उसको हम स्टार्टअप तक लेकर के जा रहे हैं और स्टार्टअप से हम मेक इन इंडिया, जो मेरे देश के प्रधानमंत्री ने कहा कि मेक इन इंडिया, डिजिटल इंडिया, स्किल इंडिया, स्टार्टअप और स्टैंड अप, जो ये मेक इन इंडिया है वहां तक लेकर के जाएंगे और तेजी से बढ़ रहा है। आपने देखा कि पीछे के समय आज ही सुबह में IIT हैदराबाद के साथ जुड़ा था, उन्होंने एक ऐसा स्टार्टअप शुरू किया है जहां सुरक्षा की दिशा में एक ऐसा उत्पाद शुरू किया है जो दूर तक भी विषाणु कीटाणु जो होंगे उसको, उनकी मार को जो रोक सकता है। इस तरीके का आज ही सुबह हमारा एक स्टार्टअप शुरू हुआ है। तो हमने युक्ति पोर्टल किया है, जितने भी IITs और विश्वविद्यालय हैं हमारे जहाँ शोध और अनुसंधान हो रहे हैं, वो हमारी युक्ति पोर्टल पर अपने अनुसंधान को करेंगे। पूरी दुनिया उसका विजिट कर सकती है उस युक्ति पोर्टल का। और इसलिए हम शोध और अनुसंधान की दिशा में भी बहुत आगे तेजी से बढ़ेंगे। और जहां तक तकनीकी का विषय है, वो नेशनल एजुकेशन टेक्नोलॉजी फोरम का हम गठन कर रहे हैं। अंतिम छोर के व्यक्ति को भी तकनीकी की जानकारी और उसका उपयोग और लाभ मिल सके और वोकल फॉर लोकल और लोकल फॉर ग्लोबल तक, वो लोकल को हम ग्लोबल तक पहुंचाने के लिए उसका सामर्थ्य बढ़ाना चाहते हैं, उसको सक्षम करना चाहते हैं। और इसीलिए ये जो नई शिक्षा नीति है नए आयाम को लेकर के आ रही है, नए विचार के साथ लेकर के आ रही है, नए परिवर्तन के साथ लेकर के आ रही है। मुझे भरोसा है कि इन परिस्थितियों में भी जिस तरीके से आपने ये वर्चुअल माध्यम से ये पूरे दुनिया के शीर्षतम लोगों को यहाँ पर एकत्रित किया है, निश्चित रूप में आप परामर्श करेंगे शोध और अनुसंधान के क्षेत्र में और कोविड के समय में इस चुनौती का कैसे हम लोग मात कर सकते हैं, इसको सामना कर सकते हैं। हमने स्टडी इन इंडिया को भी शुरू किया है और मुझे इस बात की खुशी है कि पूरी दुनिया के तमाम छात्र हिंदुस्तान को अपना एक महत्वपूर्ण गंतव्य बना रहे हैं। और मुझे भरोसा है कि हिंदुस्तान जो ज्ञान का जो एक ऐसा महासागर बनेगा, एक ऐसा केंद्र बनेगा। जब इस देश को विश्व गुरु के रूप में देखा गया था, क्योंकि इसके विजन की कमी नहीं है, इसके पास जो चीजें हैं उनको नए अनुसंधान के साथ आगे बढ़ाने की क्षमता है, ताकत भी है। और निश्चित रूप में स्टडी इन इंडिया के तहत हमने कुछ ऐसे कार्यक्रम दिए हैं जहां पूरी दुनिया के छात्र हमारे यहाँ आकर के उस शिक्षा को लेकर के जा सकते हैं। हम दोहरी डिग्री, जो डबल डिग्री वाला अभी बहुत जल्दी जो नई शिक्षा नीति में हम लेकर आए हैं, ताकि पूरे विश्व के छात्र यहाँ आ सकें और यहाँ के छात्र पूरी दुनिया में जा सकें, ऐसा हम लोगों की कोशिश है। मैं समझता हूं कि अभी जिस तरीके से हमने स्मार्ट इंडिया हैकाथॉन किया है, जिस तरीके से हमने सिंगापुर इंडिया हैकाथॉन किया है, हमने ड्रग हैकाथॉन किया है, हमने टाई हैकाथॉन किया है, अभी हम आसियान इंडिया हैकाथॉन कर रहे हैं, तो हम यहाँ की प्रतिभाओं को किस तरीके से आगे ला सकते हैं। अद्भुत प्रकार से छात्र की प्रतिभा सामने आई है, देश और दुनिया के सामने आई है। और मुझे ये कहते हुए भी खुशी है कि आसियान देशों के 1000 से भी अधिक छात्र आज हिंदुस्तान की IITs में शोध और अनुसंधान के लिए यहाँ आए हैं। और हिंदुस्तान की तमाम लवली यूनिवर्सिटी सहित तमाम विश्वविद्यालयों में पूरी दुनिया के छात्र पढ़ रहे हैं। और अशोक जी, जो आपने कहा, मुझे इस बात की खुशी है कि मेरे देश के प्रधानमंत्री जी ने जो अनुसंधान की बात की है, ये बात सच है। एक वक्त था जब इस देश के तत्कालीन प्रधानमंत्री लाल बहादुर शास्त्री जी ने, जब देश सीमाओं से जूझ रहा था और खाद्यान्न से जूझ रहा था, तब उन्होंने जय जवान जय किसान का नारा देकर पूरा देश को खड़ा कर दिया था। उसके बाद भारत रत्न अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी आए और उन्होंने विज्ञान को कहा कि अब एक कदम आगे जाकर विज्ञान की जरूरत है। और तब परमाणु परीक्षण करके उन्होंने पूरी दुनिया को अचंभित कर दिया था। इसलिए नहीं कि हम दूसरों को क्षति पहुंचाना चाहते हैं, बल्कि इसलिए सक्षम एक आदमी यदि दूसरे को, कमजोर आदमी कभी दूसरे की मदद नहीं कर सकता है। और विचार भी जब ताकतवर आदमी होता है तो जब वो कुछ बात कहता है तो वो दर्शन होता है। कमजोर आदमी किसी बात को कहता है तो हंसी का पात्र होता है। तो इसलिए ये जरूरी है कि ताकतवर आदमी हो। हम तो विश्व बंधुत्व वाले हैं। हमने तो हमेशा कहा है, माता भूमि पुत्रो हम पृथिव्या, पूरी धरती को हमने माँ कह करके पुकारे। पूरी दुनिया में कोई सोच भी नहीं सकता है। हम तो पूरी दुनिया के जितने भी मनुष्य हैं उनको अपना भाई बहन मानते हैं, हम एक परिवार मानते हैं। दुनिया के लोगों ने भले ही दुनिया को मार्केट माना हो, लेकिन हमने मार्केट बाजार नहीं माना है, हमने परिवार माना है। हम परिवार में जानते हैं कि परिवार में हमेशा प्यार होता है, सुख और दुख बांट करके हम चलते हैं। और बाजार की जो अवधारणा है, वो जिसकी जेब में पैसा होगा वो राजा रहेगा, लेकिन जिस दिन पैसा खत्म होगा वो रंग भिखारी की तरह चौराहे पर खड़ा होगा। यह हमारा विचार नहीं रहा है। हमने तो परिवार का विचार किया है। सब मिलकर के सेना भवतु सैनो वनतु सहवीर्यम करवावे तेजस्वी न बदित मस्तु महाविद विषामय। हम जो करेंगे साथ साथ मिलकर करेंगे, सबके लिए करेंगे। और तेन त्यक्तेन भुंजीता, नहीं मुझे उतना ही प्राप्त करना है जितनी मेरी जरूरत है। मुझे सबको बांट करके आगे बढ़ना है, सबको साथ लेकर के चलना है। अरुण यह मधुमय देश हमारा, जहां पहुंच अनजान क्षितिज को मिलता एक सहारा। हम तो सहारा देने वाले लोग हैं कि जो अनजान भी है उसको भी सहारा बन करके ये देश खड़ा होगा। मुझे भरोसा है कि इन सारे जितने भी अच्छे विचार हैं और अच्छे सर्वगुण संपन्न रचनात्मक व्यक्तित्वों का निर्माण है, वो इन्हीं विचारों से होकर के गुजरेगा। आज मुझे इस बात की खुशी है कि लवली यूनिवर्सिटी ने ऐसे समय में पूरे इंटरनेशनल एक ऐसे सेमिनार को आयोजित किया है, जब सभी शिक्षाविद इन चुनौतियों का मुकाबला करने के लिए अपने अपने न केवल सुझाव देंगे, बल्कि हिंदुस्तान के साथ बैठकर इसका डट करके मुकाबला करेंगे और इस शिक्षा का उत्थान करेंगे। मुझे इस बात की भी खुशी है कि हमने स्वयं प्रभा, ई पाठशाला, दीक्षा और NDL, इनके माध्यम से एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म तैयार किया है। स्वयं हमारा पूरी दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा प्लेटफॉर्म है। प्रधानमंत्री जो अभी हम लोगों ने ई विद्या, PM ई विद्या, प्रधानमंत्री ई विद्या के तहत वन नेशन वन डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म का स्वरूप दिया है। और उसमें इन सभी चीजों को किया है। और जिन लोगों के पास स्मार्ट टेलीफोन नहीं है, जिनके पास इंटरनेट की सुविधा नहीं है, उस गरीब अंतिम छोर के व्यक्ति के साथ भी हम पहुंच कर रहे हैं। इसलिए स्वयं प्रभा के 32 चैनल हमारे पास जो टीवी पर आते हैं, जो टाटा स्काई पर आते हैं, जो तमाम प्रकार से विभिन्न माध्यमों से हम करते हैं। हमारा लक्ष्य है, हम अंतिम छोर के बच्चे को भी नहीं छोड़ना चाहेंगे। उसके पास, जिसके पास कोई सुविधा नहीं है, उनको विभिन्न माध्यमों से 1 क्लास 1 चैनल का जो हम लोगों ने एक सिद्धांत दिया है और उस विषयों को उस पर अपलोड कर रहे हैं, उस तक जाने के लिए विभिन्न माध्यमों से हम कर रहे हैं। तो इस चुनौती भरे समय में, जबकि कोविड काल में हिंदुस्तान की शिक्षा व्यवस्था ने अपने को और सुदृढ़ किया है और पूरी दुनिया के लिए एक उदाहरण प्रस्तुत किया है, ऐसे ही समय में जब इस 2020 को पीछे का जो गया 2020 है, वो कोविड की इस महामारी के लिए दुनिया जानेगी। वहां दुनिया हिंदुस्तान में आ रही है नई शिक्षा नीति जो बड़े रिफॉर्म के साथ आई है, उसको भी महसूस करेगी। और अब तो जो नई शिक्षा नीति के रूप में रिफॉर्म अब हमारे सामने है, हमने उसको अब परफॉर्म भी करना है। हर हालत में हम परफॉर्म भी करेंगे और ट्रांसफॉर्म तक भी हम जाएंगे। और इसीलिए हम संकल्प के साथ इस नई शिक्षा नीति को पूरे विश्व के पटल के लिए कि आप आओ, मिल करके हम बढ़ेंगे। हम हर विषय में, हर क्षेत्र में, चाहे ज्ञान में हो, विज्ञान में हो, अनुसंधान में हो, टेक्नोलॉजी में हो, नवाचार में हो, आचार में हो, विचार में हो, व्यवहार में हो, संस्कार में हो, जीवन दर्शन में हो, हर क्षेत्र में भारत 4 दिशा में आगे शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में बढ़ेगा। एक महामानव को भी तैयार करेगा जो सभी गुणों से युक्त, जो ज्ञान, विज्ञान और अनुसंधान के शिखर को चुन सकेगा। तो आपने जो ये बहुत अच्छे तरीके से ये कई विषयों को मैं देख रहा था, जिन विषयों को आपने स्पर्श किया है, इसमें जुड़ने वाले सारे दुनिया के इन शिक्षाविदों को मैं अभिनंदन कर रहा हूं। मैं इनका आह्वान कर रहा हूं कि इस नई शिक्षा नीति भारत को NEP 2020 के साथ जुड़ करके इसका मुकाबला भी वो करें जो वर्तमान में चुनौती है। और अशोक जी, मैं चाहूंगा कि जो मुझको सुन रहे हैं वो सभी लोगों तक मेरी भावना उन्हीं की भाषाओं में आप जरूर उन तक पहुंचाएंगे। मैं एक बार पुनः आपको और आपकी पूरी टीम को, आपकी विजनरी टीम है, मैंने देखा है, निकटता से देखा है आपकी पूरी टीम को, और आज आपके माध्यम से जुड़े विश्व के सभी शिक्षाविदों का मैं अभिनंदन करता हूँ, शुभकामनाएं देता हूँ कि कोविड इस चुनौती भरी समय में हम योद्धा की तरह खड़े होकर के अपने छात्रों को आगे बढ़ा सकें। आप सबका अभिनंदन, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर आपका, आपने हमें समय दिया।
आदरणीय माननीय मंत्री जी, आपके शब्द हमेशा ही हम सबको प्रोत्साहित करते हैं। हम सब में एक नई ऊर्जा, एक नए विश्वास और एक नए उत्साह का संचार करते हैं। मैं लवली परिवार की तरफ से आपको आश्वस्त करता हूं, विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि आज के इस कथोपकथन से, आज के इस आचार विचार विमर्श से हम कुछ ना कुछ नया, कुछ ना कुछ उपयोगी, कुछ ना कुछ सशक्त ज़रूर शिक्षा के लिए प्रस्तुत करेंगे। मैं पुनः आपका हार्दिक धन्यवाद देता हूं। आपका आशीष, आपका आशीर्वाद, आपका मार्गदर्शन और आपके दिशा निर्देश हमें ऐसे ही मिलते रहें। प्रभु हमारी अनुकंपा स्वीकार कीजिए। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद माननीय मंत्री जी, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका। We are now going to proceed to the panel number 1, and may I ask Mr. Amal Mittal, the Director International Affairs of Lovely Professional University, to begin the proceedings for panel 1 of the discussion today. Mr. Aman Mittal.
Good, shabash.
Should we go? Good morning to our attendees and speakers from North America and Europe. Good afternoon to our attendees from Asia, and very good evening to our speakers and attendees from Australia. And a very, very thank you to the Honorable Education Minister Nishankji, our Honorable Chancellor Mr. Ashok Mittalji, and all the other attendees who are here available on this platform. What a conglomerate of global speakers are here today as this International Higher Education Conference on opportunities on post-COVID world is being organized by Lovely Professional University. This conference has already reached to a very new height as the Honorable Minister himself consented to be part of this conference and gave such a powerful speech which shows that India is going ahead with its strong policy in the new education policy to be the Vish Guru, which means the global leader in education. And I think with this conglomerate of people who are present here, all the speakers from different universities, different parts of the world, the message that the minister has given it forward is that, yes, we are here to make a global impact and we would need to collaborate with each other to reach to this milestone. And though the COVID has stopped the universities or closed the universities, but the education did not stop during this COVID time. And I'm happy to take this discussion forward, which has been started with a powerful address by our Honorable Union Minister of Education, Dr. Nishankji, where we're going to talk about or discuss about the biggest setbacks of the COVID in the international higher education. Was it student mobility? Is it the online learning? Or the enrollment challenges that we're going to face? We have with us Dr. Laviraj Gupta, the Executive Dean of Lovely Professional University, who's going to moderate this session. Dr. Laviraj Gupta is the IIT Kanpur alum and has numerous research papers already on his name, and and numerous patents have already been published. 3 already have been published and granted in Australia and India. So these are, I'm sure he's going to moderate it and have a very meaningful discussion. And we have a very interesting speakers lineup today. We have Dr. Stacey Farway, the Pro Vice Chancellor, International, La Trobe University, Australia. We have Professor Lawrence Pratchett, Pro Vice Chancellor, Student Partnership and International, University of Canberra, Australia. We have Professor Seth Kunin, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Curtin University, Australia. Mr. James Aldridge, Vice Provost, International, Lakehead University, Canada. And Professor Lozes Samuel, Vice Rector of Academic Affairs, European University, Cyprus. We also have to have a Neha Grover, Director Education, Australian Trade and Investment Commission in India, but unfortunately because of personal reasons she's not able to join this conference. But I'm sure the 5 speakers that we have, international speakers coming from Canada, Cyprus, Australia, they're going to have a very interesting deliberation on this interesting topic. So I pass it on to Dr. Laviraj Gupta ji to take this discussion forward. Thank you and hope you're going to have a great time.
So good afternoon, everybody. Good morning and good evening to people who have joined from the different time zones. With me, as Mr. Aman stated, that I've got august panelists, esteemed academicians, and prolific administrators with me. The agenda for this panel discussion would be around that what were the biggest setbacks during the COVID-19 times in the international higher education. It may be pertaining to various disciplines, domains and thoughts, but we are basically going to funnel it down to 3 prime and most preeminent kind of points. That's student mobility, the online learning and the enrollment challenges, which the entire international higher education is encountering in the COVID-19 and post-COVID-19 era. To begin with, let me ask Dr. Stacey Farway, the Pro Vice Chancellor, International. Dr. Faraway, the impact of COVID-19 has been principally traumatic to specifically the countries who have internationalized education to an extent, like UK, USA, Canada, Australia. Now, because the student moving to these countries for their education might have actually depleted, it might have gone down, the enrollment might have gone down. Please tell us, what were the main impacts during this COVID period, and how was this effect mitigated? Please, Dr. Faraway. You're not audible, Dr. Faraway, please.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you very much. No, I was just waiting for somebody to unmute me so I could speak. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me here. It's really, I'm very honoured to be here with lovely professional university and with such amazing guests as well, guest speakers. And also I just wanted to acknowledge the Honourable Minister for Education and the Chancellor as well. And thank you very much for your speech earlier, and also for inviting me here as well. So I guess to get to the heart of the question, surely, you know, it is certainly the case that the COVID-19 has posed quite big challenges, I think, for universities that have traditionally had large numbers and large intakes of international students coming into their countries and into their universities. And I think I could probably break this down in a couple of ways that we've had significant impact. I think, first of all, the big impact for us was to ensure that we had continuity of service for our students. I think we really had to make some very swift and rapid changes to what's a traditional on-campus learning environment for our students to really quickly shift into the online learning space. And it wasn't just online learning and the engagement through classes, lectures, workshops and the like. It was actually also our services and our support services that we had to rapidly shift all of these services into an online environment so that we can continue to offer that exceptional level of service that I think we're really incredibly well known for. So all of that was our very, very first priority, of course. But, you know, obviously, with closed borders, particularly in places like Australia, where we've had closed borders for some time, we've also had to readjust and replan, I suppose, because of the impact that we've experienced financially. Our enrolment numbers have declined. It's no surprise to many people. But I think what actually has been a surprise is how many people actually have stayed with the university to continue their studies online. I think we've all been really pleased to see that, and perhaps it's, you know, the level of service that we provide, the support that we provide, and I think the information that we've been communicating to our students, to our partners, to everybody that we work with around the quality of the online experience and the quality of the support services that students are going to receive with us, that I think we've really been able to continue to enrol students and teach via distance. And that has certainly put us in a very good position going forward, I think, to continue that engagement, continue our international education, really continue to bring international students into our own classrooms and benefit our students who are here as well. And it's not just our international students who are studying online, our domestic Australian students are also still studying online in some cases. They're choosing to stay online and still engaging as well, which is really wonderful to see. From a university perspective, we did some very close looking at our finances and made a couple of really quick changes to obviously manage any reduction in income. But my university particularly, we actually took this as an opportunity to really reset our strategy, and we had a very comprehensive look at our university-wide strategy and reset for a 10-year plan that really did take into consideration the impact of COVID immediately on the university, but then also that rebound and recovery period that we were hoping to see over the next 5 to 10 years. Our intention at the moment and what we're actually currently doing is refocusing on our core and really focusing in on the strengths of the university, both from a research and a teaching perspective, and also our community and our engagement with industry as well, to really set us up for a very strong rebound and recovery when borders do open, so that we've got a very comprehensive and a very solid offering for both our Australian students, but also the international student audience as well. What's been, I think, from a broader sector perspective, I think is actually really quite interesting is that, you know, our total enrolments in Australia for 2020 only declined by 5%. So that students are still certainly engaging online. We have had a decline in commencement, but like I said before, it's been really heartening to see that students are still continuing with us online. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't think we can hear you.
Yep. So as Professor Farway was talking about that the online content, comprehensive research is to be done for the online content. Professor Lois Samayo, I'll ask and I want you to throw some light on that there were whole loads of MOOCs and online courses. They were available, and the institutions worldwide were really not prepared. The sudden insurgence of the pandemic actually needed some quick paradigmatic shifts from classroom teaching to online teaching. How you and your university managed this transition from room to Zoom kind of a education?
Thank you for the question. Hello, everyone. Good morning from Cyprus. I'm very glad to participate today as the speaker panelist in this important conference. And thank you for the invitation by the lovely professional university. The theme of the conference is at the core of the issues we currently address in higher education. And your question is very important in terms of lessons we have learned during this period, this 1 year period. So responding to your question, I would add my first general comment saying that reporting and analyzing on our own university's responses, taking to address emergency situation, as we do today, and given your question, provide us all essential insight on relevant policies and practices, and identified information on gaps and support that can inform and encourage our comparable strategies and responses, as well as our experience and concerns. This is actually what happened in the large majority of countries around the world when we decided all temporarily to suspend face-to-face instruction and move to remote learning model of delivery. Going to my university here at the European University Cyprus, and in reflecting on how processes and collaborations allowed critical decision-making and actions under the circumstances, I would suggest today to the panel 3 main underlying pillars that may help and may play a key role in a successful process. The first pillar I would suggest is the speed to the response. In our university, we strategically invested on the speed factor. The online transition from teaching conventionally face-to-face courses took place over a window of 2 working days. Thus, in less than a week's time, all conventional courses were transferred to an online mode of instruction, and the majority of students regularly participated in their courses by the end of the first week of the transition. Additionally, all work, collaborations, and key decisions of all involved committees throughout the semester followed the progression of the courses, along with immediate responses to gaps or problems, for example, in midterm exams or final exams, or in providing support for students with disabilities and or special education needs and so on. So these were identified in a way that they were all resolved within a very few days without putting on hold any teaching that was required to complete the semester. A second and related pillar is innovation. When at universities we have established innovation university culture, the work and decisions made throughout a semester under such circumstances, people and bodies at our university were involved in trying to use technological and pedagogical knowledge which was existent in order to identify the best and the most innovative solution in each situation. This provided that in all decision-making, people involved had a mixture of management, pedagogical, or technical expertise in order to define the best possible solution in all these levels. To support this online transition, the university utilized a number of existing working groups and committees and structures which were relevant to the pandemic response. For example, at the management level, the Senate, the Rectorate Committee, the Executive Committee, and the Crisis Management Team worked on a continuous basis to address all the needs and respond to the government's directives and announcements and comply with the Ministry of Education decisions. At a more technical level, the Department of Information System and Operations worked for enabling a smooth transition of the courses in an online mode. At the pedagogical level, our office, the Office of the Vice Rector of Academic Affairs, via the Digital Enhanced Learning Standing Committee of the university, worked to implement a specific policy for the online teaching of conventional programs of study and support academic staff and students in this transition. And the last third pillar refers to a culture of adaptability. Adaptability is directly related to a number of existing processes and structures which play a key role in such a process. In our case, these included the presence of two learning management systems widely used at the university, and these were Moodle and Blackboard. For instance, the prior campus-wide use of Moodle ended up to have more than 90% of the spring 2020 semester courses being on Moodle already before the COVID-19 lockdown. Also, the technical and pedagogical experiences of faculty based on the fact that the university offers around 20% of its program of study as distance learning programs of study. Third, an ongoing, even until today, needs-based professional development and training provided to a significant number of our faculty. And last, the policy for professional development and training provided already strategically aiming at enhancing pedagogical approaches in conventional courses. In order to conclude, and in sum, what our university would suggest to the panel today as a lesson learned is that in managing the emergency situation of the pandemic, our universities need to have in place a great deal of expertise, policies, and technologies to be utilized and adapted in a speedy and innovative fashion. So the three cornerstones for success, which I suggest to the panel today, is speed, innovation, and adaptability. Thank you.
To the paucity of the time, may I request the panelists to be a little crisp and a little quick. I request you so that we complete the session timely so that the panel 2 begins on time. I'll now come to Professor Seth Kiernan, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Curtin University, Australia. Professor, I wish to understand that COVID-19, it actually barged into our lives and it permeated all aspects of our life. Whatever you talk about, it completely distracted our life. I wish to understand from you that what were the biggest losses that you felt and what kind of profound impact those losses pertaining to learning, teaching learning, and what kind of lessons are being learnt from COVID-19. Professor Seth.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this session. I mean, I should say, firstly, that Western Australia has actually had a very light touch of COVID overall. We had a lockdown, I think lasted about a month, that was due as a precaution, but not due to widespread COVID. So that in Western Australia itself, we have had very little impact. But for Curtin University, we have had significant impact because we have five significant campuses and one significant partner in parts of the world where COVID was South Africa, Singapore, Mauritius, and Dubai. I would say it was very, very important parts of the world. So each of those campuses had a much harder experience with COVID. The university as a whole, because of COVID regulations in WA and beyond, has been teaching online and pivoted in the same way as many the other universities that are COVID. I think the main issue that we have been challenged is that particularly the fact that was designed much of our material is not designed and was basically transitioned very quickly to so that our students would have no loss. And our students were very accommodating and continue to be very accommodating to material online, but there clearly is a major difference between material designed to be taught online and material that's designed to be taught face-to-face. And I think the biggest challenge for any university is to try to make that jump as quickly as possible. And I think we have done in many areas quite excellent work in that space, but I think there still is a major issue that we will face in respect of that change. And it's one, if we're looking at the future, that is fundamental to what we all need to be doing, is to have material available that is designed to be taught online, that is equivalent in quality and experience to that which is taught face-to-face. I think the other major area that I would say is a significant loss, and this is a loss for our students in Australia who, although not suffering significantly from COVID, but having to study at home, and certainly our students studying at our campuses and in other countries where we don't have campuses. The major loss that students had, and I would say that staff has, is the loss of community. And I think that this is fundamental. Our students lost the community with each other, all of the activities and the connections, formal and informal, both in the classroom and outside the classroom. And our staff equally were atomized in their homes, teaching excellent quality courses, but very much on their own. I think that as we move forward, the fundamental issue that we need to address is how do we have the right quality material that's available that can be taught in many different modes and in very many different locations, but how, even more importantly, do we create community for our staff and our students so that they have a real holistic experience that's a university experience.
Thank you so much, Professor. I'll now take it to Dr. Lawrence. I'll take it to Dr. Lawrence right now and would try to understand from him that do you feel that response of Australian policy makers, specifically when I'm talking about the response of policymaker, I'm talking about the enrollment of international students for offshore campuses in Australia. They were well aligned with the universities and higher education institute in Australia. Were there an alignment, Dr. Lawrence?
Dr. Gupta, thank you very much for that question. I was really hoping you'd ask me something like that. Can I just join my fellow panelists in thanking you for inviting me to this, and particularly to hear the Honourable Education Minister speak and the Honourable Chancellor. In terms of the extent to which our policy has been coordinated, I think there's been a big disconnect in Australia between what the universities would have liked to have happened and what our policy teams have done at the central government level. Even our state governments have been very effective in controlling and reducing the incidences of COVID-19. Our government has been focused on that, but it has also not been providing clear signals to the international students who want to come as to when they'll be able to come. And it's still very unclear now as to when we'll be able to actually have international students who are currently offshore come back to Australia. The other big policy failing I think that our government has had is its failure to look after international students that were here. And so whilst during COVID there were a range of welfare positions put in place to support domestic citizens of Australia and permanent residents of Australia, international students were not looked after and were not supported in any way, and it just fell to the universities to do that. Having said that, I think universities have risen to the challenge and responded very well to look after all of our international students that are here. Certainly at the University of Canberra, we did extensive efforts to ensure that our international students were taken care of. And I believe that's the same with every university in Australia. Thank you.
I'll now move to Mr. James Aldridge. He's the Vice Provost, Lakehead University, Canada. Let us understand from him that, new international enrollments, they've dropped by more than half. How this drop or depletion in the enrollment has affected the overall enrollment in your university? Because they go side by side. How it happened and how it affected? Please, Mr. James.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. James Aldridge here. I'm based in Thunder Bay, Ontario, for Lakehead University. Like my colleagues from Australia and Cyprus, I also want to thank Lovely Professional University for hosting us today, and to the Honourable Minister for his words at the beginning. Really pleased to be part of the panel. I have just learned that although it appears to me that my video is on, that other panelists can't see me. Is that right? Correct. Oh, that's correct. There must be some technical challenge. Here I am sitting here in front of a camera and I can see myself, but I didn't realize that that others were unable to see me. But I'll continue anyway. So the situation in Canada has been quite different, I think, than it has been for some of my colleagues here. First of all, Canada reopened our borders in late October of 2020. And so we have had a few hundred of our 1,500 international students be able to travel back into Canada and join us at the university. We're still in a situation of online learning only. We've been that way for about a full year now. But we do have students in the community, and we're able to receive students back into Canada right now, although the numbers are still fairly low. So that's been quite a different situation for us. So we managed to minimize the losses of international student registrations to about 10% overall. We're down a little bit, but not nearly as much as we had feared we would be last year. Like my colleagues, the big challenges for us was the shift to online learning and the shift to the online support reality. We built what we call the online community of care for students. So after we switched to online in sort of an emergency online learning situation to finish out our semester last year in March and April before the summer break, we also moved all of our supports online. By the start of our fall semester in September, we were pretty much up and running for a full online virtual learning environment. And I can say with some confidence that that's gone as well as can be expected given the short timelines to prepare for that. Unlike the gentleman from Cyprus, we are not an institution that did a lot of distance learning previously. So the move to online was something quite new for us and required a huge team effort. And in similar ways to some of the colleagues that have mentioned, the adaptability and flexibility were sort of at the center of all of that, and making sure that we had strong committees and working groups to move things from a technological point of view and from a teaching and learning pedagogical point of view. So for us, in terms of numbers, yes, we are down, but we're lucky compared to some other countries like Australia, for example, who unfortunately have been forced to keep borders closed. We've got our borders open for the most part. However, the challenge has been there that we are enormously stressed as an international team to provide the appropriate and government-required, government-mandated check-in processes for the students. So it hasn't been a simple process. The different levels of government, federal, provincial, and local health units have all had different rules around arrivals protocols and testing for COVID and things like that. And that's put an enormous strain on the international offices of universities across Canada. We are required to make daily check-ins during the 14-day quarantine period for every single student that arrives. And just getting them here in the first place has been quite a challenge. Right now, any student who arrives into Canada has to do a 3-day hotel stay in quarantine with the government before they come to the institution. So we're hopeful that in the next few months, those, as we see numbers decline, hopefully, COVID numbers hopefully will decline, and we'll see a change in government policy around arrivals. But that's the situation we're in right now. Locally here, where we are at our university, the COVID numbers have dropped substantially, and we're hopeful that that will continue. But one thing that we've definitely learned throughout the pandemic is flexibility and being ready for something new to happen every single day, and that's played out pretty consistently. So flexibility has been very important for us. So I'll leave my comments at that for now. Thank you.
We all understand that now COVID-19 has taught us that quickness and quickness, they both are the need of the hour. I'll go back again to Professor Seth, and I once again request you, because of the paucity of this time, if you can be a little brief, maybe in 2 minutes, you can share your thoughts with the August gathering and with your colleagues. It'll be easier for us to sum up this session in coming 8 to 10 minutes. I'll go to Professor Seth Kunin once again. See, Professor Kunin, we all have bad experiences out of this, COVID-19, be it in terms of births, be in terms of, mass care or things happening around us. Now, what measures we as an educational institute should take so that we can withstand such kind of pressures? Have we all individually as institutions and collectively as organizations taken any measures to mitigate these kind of sudden slots in times to come? Professor Kunin.
Okay, I'll try to limit my comments to a couple. First of all, I think one of the fundamental changes that we need to look at is in building in much more adaptable and flexible university structures and engagement with accrediting bodies. Universities tend to be very slow to make decisions. I think one of the outcomes of COVID is making very quick decisions and making very good decisions, and we need to build that in so that it's part of our structures and work with our governing bodies and with TEXA and other similar organizations to make sure that we can maintain that speed and flexibility. Secondly, we need to look at much more flexible models of delivery so that if a university has multiple campuses, if it has multiple platforms of delivery, it needs to have very flexible and easy modes of allowing students to move through those different modes of delivery in a very quick way and a seamless way so that the student experience is maintained and the quality of delivery and the quality of experience is maintained. And finally, I think that we need as a responsibility of every university to really look into the online delivery space, look at AI, look at virtual reality, look at augmented reality, and create real experiential learning spaces that allow the creation of community and the creation of excellent learning opportunities for students anywhere and in any situation.
I'll move to Professor Samayo. Professor Samayo, it has COVID-19, as I was talking about. It has come up with a new mantra of stay home, stay safe, meaning thereby that this mantra is confining individuals into closed spaces and curtailing or completely negating the mobility, be it students, be it teachers. The mobility has been completely, negated. How do you think, as an academician, this will lead to challenges or something like that? Please, Professor Samayo. Audio, please. Professor Samayo's audio. Professor Samayo, just wait for a while. We are experiencing some audio break.
Okay, I was unmuted.
Now, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Well, again, my response would be on reflecting on what we have been doing in the past and what we have learned during the pandemic. And again, innovation and adaptability is one of the things that we need to have in mind. So, for example, if we're talking about mobility, and we accept that there are a lot of important benefits in students and instructors and academic staff to be mobile, we now know better that some of our choices in the past were, for example, very costly, or some people, some of our students, some of our colleagues were excluded, or some ways of transmitting our messages were unsuccessful. Now we do have some real data, as we have managed to collect the information during this 1 year on how we could make this mobility opportunities we have in universities, not only for our staff, but also for our students to use. In this way, we'll allow mobility of users to access their destination and the content of their activity. For example, conferences, internships, study visits, clinical practices, and so on, not only face-to-face and on situ, but also online, and make use of a number of useful embedded or add-on technological tools to enhance users' full, partial, or virtual mobility experiences. For example, we need to capitalize on the potential that students can be further trained on how to systematically use methodologies of integrating technologies of learning, instruction, and communication in face-to-face activities, and how these can be used during their mobility in technology-enhanced activities, which can offer added unique benefits and experiences related to their mobility and more effective outcomes. My last point is that a principle in reflecting on the lessons we learned during the COVID era is that our post-COVID mobility policies should not follow the one-size-fits-all paradigm. This implies that our traditional mobility schemes ought to include a variety now of options, both hybrid and fully virtual. And this suggests that our academic staff and students during their mobility will be given a more active role, and their voice will be heard compared to the past, and will be taken even more, and this will take even more advantage of their mobility in a more flexible, the word flexible was heard a lot of times today, on a needs-based setting and principle, and being more sensitive in difficulties of our students and our colleagues in being mobile. Thank you.
I'll now move on to Dr. Lawrence. Dr. Lawrence, we are presently in a situation wherein we are hoping that the vaccination would actually stop this menace, and then the students actually would start moving actually to the country of their choice, which means that when the pandemic will be brought to an end, there'll be a tremendous surge of students to Australia. Now, when we say that there'll be a tremendous surge, are we strategically ready to deal with the rush of students? Please, Dr. Lawrence.
I can see Professor Coonan nodding his head there. I think the answer is very much yes. I think the universities themselves are very ready and prepared to welcome back and to welcome a large number of international students to Australia. Australia has always had a very significant proportion of students. The average in any university overall is about 22 to 23% of the student body in our universities. And I think that's going to continue with the Australian universities are able to have. The big challenge would be the extent to which the Australian government is able to process all of the applications and to provide the facilities to bring those students back, because I sense that there won't just be an opening of the borders and everybody will be able to come in without any sort of quarantine, any sort of check on the COVID vaccines and so on. There will be a slow process of doing that. So if there's much to do with the administration, the government and the airlines, certainly the university structure in Australia is ready and willing to take students as soon as possible.
Thank you. That was a brilliant and wonderful insight. I'll now move on to Dr. Stacey. Dr. Stacey, we need to understand a situation that students were brought to the campus, but owing to the guidelines of social distancing and all other such hygiene-oriented guidelines, they were still actually given the online content. Now, we as universities or your university need to understand the essence of combating this teaching in isolation actually, because that may be in times to come the ideology, the philosophy of the student might get changed. Please enlighten us that how we can actually manage, how we can mitigate this remote kind of connection. Dr. Stacey.
Thank you very much. I think it was really great to hear Professor Seth speak earlier about community and that sense of community and how we are actually working incredibly hard to not only provide the usual standard support services and administrative services to our students to really support them through very difficult times. And they have had difficulties and challenges both financially but also academically, studying by distance and not. But I think the piece around community is something that we've strived very hard to actually provide that support and engagement for students while they have been studying at a distance from the rest of from the university and from their colleagues and also from the staff. We've actually worked quite significantly with our partners to provide supplementary services outside of what the university might typically normally do to really bring students together in different forums and really centred it around health and well-being, because that's the critical issue of the time at the moment is ensuring that they're staying active, ensuring that they're staying mentally fit. And we work with Medibank Private, which is a large health insurance and health provider in Australia. And we've been working collaboratively with them to have online health sessions, online exercise sessions, online sports classes with our own sports centre that we have, a very large sports park on campus. So we've been able to provide a whole range of additional supplementary services there that really are shaped around continuing to kind of bring people together in the typical activities that they might do on campus, but in an online world. So that's something we've been very proud of, the work that we've been able to do there through those partnerships. I think some of the other part of this is also not just the community piece, but also the stress that students have been going through, not just from a study perspective, but also from a financial perspective. And I know many universities in Australia particularly, and we had a wonderful campaign amongst our staff body to actually raise funds for international students who were experiencing financial hardship because they had families who were in lockdown, they had businesses in lockdown, and income was just a struggle for a period of time and even for longer. I think, you know, our university, La Trobe, we managed to actually put $12 million back into the pockets of students, which we were incredibly proud of. And that was our big, one of our big pieces of work that we could do to try and support the students through very difficult times in each of those different areas. So financially, there was one aspect of it, mental health, community engagement and sports, and ensuring people were staying well. And then finally, we had quite a lot of administrative changes and a lot of flexibility that was introduced from an administrative perspective to just alleviate student stress when they're already going through a very difficult time. So I think there's lots to be learned there from what others have done. And I think we've all tried to do very similar things to support the students. And I think, in fact, one of the really pleasing things that we actually recently had was the student experience surveys, that's the national survey in Australia. And our student satisfaction in 2020 actually increased. So despite all of the challenges of learning online, being at a distance and not having that physical community and physical connection with people, we still had some really satisfied students. So we were incredibly proud of that. And I know that, you know, other universities have invested a lot to make sure that they are, you know, really looking after the students, because they are, you know, the core of what we do.
I personally feel that we are generating, or we are actually coming up with loads of similar thoughts, because we are experiencing the similar kind of scenarios and situations. I'll take this opportunity to ask Mr. James Aldridge. Let's see, decrease in enrollments are there. What were the main issues that arose out of that decreased enrollments, and how this decrement or reduction in enrollment affect the stakeholders? When I talk about stakeholders, I mean the whole gamut of people who join to form academic organization. Please tell us your point of view. Possibly maybe if any one of you can take up this question of decrease enrollment and how the decrement in enrollment affects the stakeholders.
I mean, I think the issues of decrease in enrollment are obviously very serious for any university, and for many Australian universities were very significant in financial terms. But those universities that were able to move strategically, I think, had the opportunity to use that to actually strengthen what the university was doing by taking a really hard look at the nature of activities, the nature of the types of programs being offered, and look at ways of focusing activity. Now, any change is always difficult, and any change always involves staff and other members of the university needing to move on to other careers. But I think that the fundamental aspect of any change process is that it has to be done in a thought out way that says, yes, we have a reduction in income due to reduction in numbers, but we need to use that so that we actually move the university forward rather than just ending up in a worse position. And I think the second aspect is also having a long-term view of how one looks at the reduction in student numbers, because it isn't the way that it's going to necessarily be as we move into next year and into the future. If we already look at students that are applying to the university for 22, the numbers are actually up. Students still want to be doing international education. They still want international opportunities, and universities have to be looking to the future as well as the damage that's caused in the present. And thirdly, we need to be welcoming our students in different ways. So we're looking at allowing students to start at one of our different campuses and then transition to where they want to end up, which may be another one of our campuses, or it may be Australia, so that they have different opportunities, and depending on the situation in the world, different ways of entering and engaging with the university. And clearly, entering through the online space will be just as important an entryway into universities as coming through our different campuses.
Great. Looking to the paucity of time, basically, I might have continued this dialogue for hours and hours together, because we all are learning quite a lot from each other. But to sum up, basically, we all understand that the quality of the content is now going to play a major role, wherein the flexibility, both in terms of design, both in terms of the one very important thing somebody was talking about, one size fits all. In design thinking, you know, it is known as universal design. What COVID-19 has taught us is that we need to do away with universal design. We need to start looking to inclusive designs, and we'll have to actually move on to equity-focused designs, both in terms of curriculum, both in terms of student engagement, and in terms of assessment mechanism. One of the most pertinent things which has come out of this dialogue and discussion is that now policy makers need to be proactive. They need to be fast, quick, and quick enough so that, you know, whatever is being proposed is implemented the fastest. Because the moment we wait for a policy to come to our table, the time passing by depletes the motivation, reduces the enthusiasm, and moreover, the shift may happen at any given point of time. I'll not take much time. I really thank you all that you might be sitting in your odd hours right now. I'm sitting in a sunny afternoon in my working hours, but you might be sitting off hours. And so much of energy, so much of, you know, vigor during off hours, I bow all of you, and I extend my sincere gratitude. Thank you so very much, and we'll be connected, and we'll be sharing each other's point of view so that we co-create, collaborate, and cooperate to learn from each other. Thank you so much, my panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laviraj sir, and all the panelists for that very engaging discussion. We all have learned quite a few lessons during the COVID times, and we have applied some winning techniques and some not winning techniques. A very good afternoon and good evening to everyone present, and good morning as well for the people who are joining us from Canada and from US. The conference so far has been very stimulating and thought-provoking as well, and things are bound to get a little heavier with the further discussions. And I am Supriya Matthew, Deputy Director and Organizing Secretary of the conference, International Higher Education Opportunities in the Post-COVID World, Combating Crisis, Accepting Vaccines, and Living Together in the World. In this conference, we have endeavored to bring together a blend of forward-thinking leaders to bring a deeper understanding of the present-day education disruptors and examine the elements necessary to ensure the reliability of international higher education and set up a plan for the unknown and known challenges which sometimes makes the higher education very vulnerable. With this conference, LPU aims to predict a scenario for the world beyond COVID, a world which will remember the fear but will be armed with the vaccines, and how international educators will always have to be on the edge to meet the dynamic changes of nature, policy, and the socio-economic world. With that, I would like to welcome the panelists. Professor Leigh Robinson, Pro Vice Chancellor, Cardiff Metropolitan University, United Kingdom. Mr. Jack Sullivan, Director, English Language Programs, University of Pennsylvania, USA. Dr. Tony Travaglioni, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Global Engagements and Partnership, the University of Newcastle, Australia. Professor Killian Ryan, Pro Vice Chancellor, International, Nottingham Trent University, UK. Dr. Susan Zimmerman, Provost, State University of New York, Cobleskill, USA. Mr. Bewa Chadwick, Associate Vice President, International and Chief Executive Officer, Global Operations, Thompson River University, Canada. For the next track, has higher education finally understood the untapped potential of the internet? The panel is being convened and managed and hosted by Dr. Sanjay Modi, Professor and Executive Dean, Faculty of Business and Arts, Lovely Professional University, an academician, thinker, and philosopher, and one of the oldest members of LPU family with 40 years of combined industry and academia experience. I am assuring the panelists as well as the participants that this is bound to be a very engaging discussion as you delve deeper in the issues of online education and help us to envision a better higher education world for tomorrow. Also, before I hand it over to Dr. Modi, I would like to humbly apologize for the delays and for the extension of time. I understand that you all have come at a very crucial time and have taken out some personal time for this conference. So thank you for bearing with us. Over to you, Dr. Modi.
Can't hear anything, I'm afraid.
Hello. Hello. Greetings of the day, namaskar to all the panelists, and a hearty welcome to all the academic leaders from the most prestigious institutions of the global academia. I think this occasion provides us a wonderful platform to share our respective experiences in handling academic delivery during the difficult times of COVID, and also to assess as to what will be the relevance of online learning and technology in particular in times beyond COVID. I'm sure for the majority of the world, including US, though we have been technologically very sound, yet deploying technology for the purpose of education, online education, I think this has been a major stumbling block, and with many institutions it still remains to be so. So this will provide us a wonderful opportunity to learn from each other as to what we are trying to do, how we are trying to tackle the whole situation. So I would request the esteemed panel to, we are already behind schedule, but we still would like to avail at least 1 hour for our panel discussion. I would be asking about 2 to 3 questions from each panel member, and I would request them to kindly confine their responses to about 2.5 minutes, so that we have some time for a dialogue, some kind of questioning at the end of the session. So I hope that goes well with all the esteemed panelists. So my first set of questions is for Professor Leigh Robinson, and she has some engagement, so she gets priority, and ladies first always. So Professor Leigh, what is the innovation in online learning that Cardiff University has been able to incorporate during the COVID period?
Okay, thank you very much for the question, and I would like to say thank you very much to the Chancellor and all of my esteemed colleagues for the invitation. Just to say I was delighted to see the Minister of Education at such an important event. So moving on to your question about innovation, it's an interesting thing. We're an institution that does very little online teaching, and so for us, the innovation being we need to learn how to do that. So much of our time over the last year has been spent learning how to use those networks and those platforms that I suspect many other institutions are very comfortable with. We're actually learning from our students because they're much more comfortable with digital and online resources. And it's something that we as an institution are going to have to embrace more widely going forward, because I don't see us going back to what we've.
Well, thank you. And how do you think the research has got impacted because of COVID, 1, 2, and how do you see the possibility of collaborating for research internationally? Is there a possibility that Canada and India, US and India, Australia and India, we can collaborate in terms of research?
I think research has been an interesting thing, without doubt. For those colleagues who have to teach a lot, their research has been impacted because they spent so much time producing online resources that, as I said, we didn't have enough access, so we had to start from scratch with that. In other ways, research is going really well. I think one of the bonuses of where we find ourselves is that there is a increased focus, particularly on STEM research and the importance of STEM research in dealing with the pandemic and also the outcome pandemic. I think what we've also been able to do is put aside where more time to develop global collaboration, whereas in the past we would have tried to travel, and therefore those who are able to access global collaboration would be much smaller than the situation we find ourselves now. I mean, I was thinking there's 150 people, or more than 150 people at the conference. That would have been unlikely under normal circumstances, given the travel. So I actually see the pandemic and the move to online working being very, very, very positive for research collaboration, particularly international research collaboration, and particularly for those researchers that might not have been able to have access to travel to events. I'm very positive about research going forward. What we do have to do, my final point, we have to understand how we manage opportunities in research for those who also have to teach. Because until we cut down on preparation around teaching, that will not take all the time. But I'm very, very positive about research going forward.
Great. I think we all will need to explore this possibility, because even small countries, I mean, it is very surprising for us that India was able to cope pretty well with the challenge of technology. I mean, as an institution, LPU was able to go online maximum after 2 days, and we were absolutely ready and without any fault, whether it was in terms of technology or the preparedness of the faculty in terms of academic delivery. We were able to cope with that. But of course, I think research is another avenue which definitely needs to be explored for, and I wish and hope some collaboration does happen. Thank you so very much. And before I thank you very much, ma'am. There is one open question which I would like to ask everyone. You have this concept of COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning. So I would request any panel member, if they wish to respond to this, what is the possibility of COIL going forward? I mean, if you have some experience to share or some thoughts on the issue, we would love to have it, because that's one area which the international academic community will need to explore to take full advantage. I hope my question is clear. COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning. Yeah. Any thoughts on this?
Can you hear me? Jump in. Oh, go ahead. I'd love to jump in. At SUNY Global Skills, we actually have been an active partner of COIL through the State University of Texas. So we've been participating for a number of years now. And what we found, particularly during the last year, is that we've been able to reach more faculty in COIL. That this, and I think that's become something that's much more accessible. If we speak to our faculty about thinking about, smaller modules, or perhaps even small research projects, parts of research projects that can be accomplished with COIL, rather than thinking about having to do a full course or year-long research project. So I'm very encouraged. There's a lot of support and training for COIL, and that's really good.
Wonderful. Any other panel member who would like to express? Because this is an area which would, I think, in times to come, emerge as a very strong area. Yeah.
So I'm happy to speak. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you. Hi. So this is Killian. I know from Trenton. And hello, everybody.
Hi.
Yeah, so we had, I would say, a group of enthusiasts who were doing this over the last few years, but it was quite small scale. And through the international committee, I was being asked to mandate it, force everything to build this into programs, which I was reluctant to do, given lots of other things that were happening in the university. I just didn't think it would be welcome. But I have to say, over the last 12 months, where we've gone online, it has been embraced by faculty wholeheartedly, and I would say it has increased tenfold. So I've been also really heartened by the way colleagues have embraced this and got on board, and we're certainly looking to develop more and more. So if anybody else is out there who wants to contact me and get in touch with colleagues, basically every faculty now has enthusiasts who are trying to look for new opportunities for students. I think it's hugely important. I think it's one of the ways forward. I know we're going to talk about tooling at some stage during the next hour, but that still is only a small minority of our students, and if we want a large number to get access to this experience, be able to engage in conversations with colleagues across the world, then COIL is the way to do it. And the other thing I would say is one of the biggest challenges we have in international mobility is among students from socially disadvantaged backgrounds. Getting them involved in COIL means they make contact beforehand, they start chatting to people around the world, and then they get an interest in going to visit. So it's a hugely important thing.
Great, thank you, Professor. I think going by the Sustainable Development Goals of United Nations, I think we all need to identify sustainable practices which can give us a lot of benefit internationally. So I think COIL would be one area which can help save a lot of, fuel and time and financial resources for the students as well as international institutions. So let's hope it matures as a technology and as a tool of collaboration. Let me thank Professor Leigh Robinson. I think she had another engagement. Thank you, ma'am, for your very valuable inputs. And I'll continue with the rest of the panel. Thank you so much. My next set of questions to Professor Tony Trevelyan, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Global Engagement and Partnerships, the University of Newcastle, Australia. It has been felt that in certain quarters that COVID-19, a significant number of graduates are unemployed. So many of them might be thinking in terms of deferring their graduate education. So how do you think the institution is trying to recruit students, bring them back, change the mentality to go for graduate programs? And does that necessarily mean heightened or increased marketing expense, or some other tools are more effective in tackling this?
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of this panel. First of all, I must say that I come from Australia, and we are one of the fortunate countries, probably a handful in the world, that has managed COVID in a different way. And so, for example, in the region I'm in, which the university is an exclusive catchment one university for about a population of 1 million, we have not had a single COVID case. So in that regard, we have had numerous cases to our north, the largest in Sydney, which is approximately 6 million people. But we've at times closed part of the state of New South Wales now. So what that has meant is that first of all, yes, we did close for a very short period of time when first COVID landed in Australia. But it was managed well effectively. We were able to open the university face-to-face in June last year, and our students are fully on campus. So in that regard, we are a little different. But having said that, we, prior to COVID, and continue to do this, have a policy of ensuring that employability of students is primarily maintained by ensuring that students, every undergraduate student has a work experience. And so we really emphasise the student experience, but the employability aspect. And we have many programs, some for domestic students, some for international students, where fundamentally we ensure that those students are work-ready prior to exiting the university. We have about 20% of our students who are international, reported close, of course that's dropping rather quickly, but we still have about 10% of those who came here prior to COVID. So, like a handful of countries, we've managed the situation well because we had closed our borders. But what it is that we've maintained very strong student domestic growth up significantly, and we've also maintained, give or take about 10%, international students who are preparing to study online and when the borders open, coming to the country. Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to a very important question which you spoke about, employability. I think at least in India, we used to look at education as an end in itself. But now I think it has become means to an end, means to an employment. So how any other experiences the other panel members would like to share as to what is the concern about employability and employment the only goal with which people pursue graduate programs, or are there some other motivations as well? Learning is that an end in itself anywhere? Any thoughts on this?
Graduate programs as opposed to undergraduate programs?
Well, you might say about undergraduate. You're welcome.
Okay, let me just say. I mean, I think the postgraduate, the master's programs, kind of divide into two sections, don't they? Those that are specifically connected to the professional world, like qualifications in law here in the UK, or master's in business programs, and they quite clearly are very employment focused. And I guess something similar in the US, where a lot of the professional qualifications are postgraduate qualifications. On the other hand, in general, our postgraduate numbers tend to be very countercyclical. So we see high demand in recessions and low demand in boom. So that tells you something, but it's not like that people are necessarily following postgraduate education with a view to employment. It's not a replacement for employment.
Great. Thank you very much. Professor Tony, another question for you is that did you feel the need to reevaluate and influence the virtual education plan during COVID-19 in terms of the scale and the strategies which are required to deploy it?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So on the day that I felt COVID hit Australia, I had been following the situation with China quite closely, simply because of a number of connections. And so I remember the day very clearly, it was the 26th of January, that is Australia Day, it's a public holiday, and I rang my Chancellor and President early on that morning, and I said, Mr. President, we have a problem. I think this will get serious and we should go online. And of course the response was, this is a public holiday. Needless to say, I was unpopular for a period of time. But as it turned out, of course, we went online, and all Australian universities, probably all universities, went online for a period of time at least. But having said that, I was very geared up to that. I again had a number of colleagues in Italy, so I realised how bad the situation was there. So I thought our business school is very orientated to online education, so we used the staff in business school to spread those stuff throughout the university, to train staff in other schools, such as schools, which really had no experience of online education, to quickly gear them up, so that when the decision was made to go online, it was a seamless switch, and in fact we had very positive student feedback in the first half of the year before moving to face-to-face. So we had a good experience, we were ready for it. But as I say, that's because one of our 15 schools in the business school has online running through its DNA basis. Thank you.
Great. I think you had a very smart, you made a smart move. You had the first mover advantage. I'm sure you are able to sustain that even now. And business school always are the first ones to react, because they are more business-like, more swift, and the same story happened in LPU also. Another question for you, Mr. Tony, is that am I audible? Am I audible? Another question is that this COVID has closed the gap between different nations because most of them were exposed to online because of online shopping. People were exposed to the online experience. So, what is the kind of tips you would give, or guidance or advice you can provide to institutions in India in particular, higher education institutions in India, who are wanting to go for international accreditations? I mean, beyond technology, what is it that they need to look at?
Well, that's a very complex question, because certainly international accreditations really depend on what particular discipline. So typically in Australia, all the professions such as business, law, medicine, nursing, education have significant accreditations. But in terms of global accreditations, it tends to be engineering and business tend to have very well-structured global accreditations in business, very much the AAPSB and EQUIS accreditations. But I think pretty much consistent to all of these is a willingness to be global in one's approach to education. Not only curriculum, but also in terms of partnerships between universities, student exchanges, exchanges, mobility. We're very blessed in Australia. Our government has a program called the Untitled Chapter, where it funds significantly millions of dollars to universities to allow their students to travel overseas. So currently, for example, we have funded 750 students that if the borders were open right now, we could send overseas for international immersion. So all of those aspects being nationalisation, very, very critical. Thank you.
Great. No dearth of resources. That's a very happy situation. Thank you very much, Professor Tony. My next couple of questions for Mr. Jack Sullivan, the Director, English Language Program, University of Pennsylvania. And we have just had a MOU with for your English Language Program with LPU. My question to you, looking beyond the crisis created by the pandemic, do you believe that online teaching offers some viable solutions for higher education in general, which are relevant beyond the COVID period? Will it solve certain problems of online education, of the regular education as well?
First, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to speak. This is a wonderful discussion by lovely professional university, and I'd like to acknowledge the Honorable Education Minister and Chancellor for supporting this event. To answer your question about the issues that go beyond the pandemic, that there's some kind of contingency plan that we're just switched, pivoted remote for a short period of time, what should live on. And some of the areas that we found for our programs are we have a great hope that it has allowed us to keep pursuing access, or allowing access to students who hadn't had before to our programs, because there has been students who would not be able to make it to the University of Pennsylvania campus, either for cost or for geographical and specific mobility or difficult travel. Over last year, we created programs that have expanded our impact locally, that allowed us to work with populations we just hadn't before. We would work in Latin America, where we have some programs that really targeting employability and I'll pass that for Europe, and also Asia, with partnering with several universities where we were training their graduate students, teachers, the same way we teach graduate teachers, and thousands of students, so really are happy with the impact we have there. So we hope that it's going to allow us to reach more people of education last year.
And I'm sure you are at a privileged position in the university because you were already using online education. Your program is online. So I'm sure you must be consulting other departments and disciplines to help them manage their regular education through online, because you were the best in terms of handling online. Did that happen?
Yeah, we felt we were well positioned because we had already been exploring through collaborative efforts with the State Department, Coursera, and different programs. We've been exploring collaborative learning applications. So we were well positioned, and we have kind of collaborative. So we've been trying to share what we've been doing with other departments and other schools. It's a rise all boats kind of mentality.
Great. Now, you see, you have a long experience of handling online programs. Do you still believe there are certain gaps? Looking at this COVID experience, you believe there are certain gaps, or is there a scope for further improving it to kind of improve the effectiveness? And what measures you have in mind or you have initiated already to further improve the effectiveness of the online delivery?
I think some of the biggest gaps, or some of the biggest struggles in echoing some of the panelists earlier, is when you try to replicate what in-person learning is in an online environment. It just doesn't work the same way when newspapers, like for example the New York Times, when it started moving online, it just had basically what a print newspaper would be on the internet. And then it wasn't until later that we found that it's just a different medium, it's just a different form. So there's different ways to interact with it. There's different ways that it functions best and it's more optimal and it's better experience for everyone. The same with online learning. I think there's issues about online learning when you try to just zoom in completely, when you just try to have a 100% complete experience. There becomes, Zoom fatigue or screen fatigue. There difficulty in being, present the whole time. People have distractions in their house, or they have different distractions. So there's issues about that. But if you try to blend that, and try to make it an interactive experience in which it's more on demand, or there's more different types of interactions through maybe intelligent ratings, feedback, so people get an individualized experience, or people, the time that they're spent watching a video or speaking, it's more optimal for them. It's a better experience, and there's also more engagement. So I think that people, if people can shift from thinking that the online experience can be or should be what it is in person, and I think a lot of the gaps get worked out.
Great, thank you. And this will depend on a lot of individual convictions and individual ability of the teachers to be prepared and equip themselves to do what you have spelled out beautifully. Thank you very much, Professor Taliban. Thank you so much for your inputs. May I now move to request Professor Killian Ryan to take a couple of questions. Professor Killian is the Pro Vice Chancellor International, Nottingham Trent University, UK. Professor, how do you see the loss of UK's access to Erasmus Plus program post-Brexit? And how do you think the new Turin scheme is going to fill that gap? I mean, that's a big loss, Erasmus Plus scheme. So you think it?
Let me start by similarly thanking my colleagues who are thinking lovely university for holding this really interesting discussion.
Pleasure.
And say how much I was from the speech from the Chancellor and the Minister. Very enlightening. I suppose the other thing I just want to say, given that we're all here today, and it just comes across everything people are saying. We need to celebrate just how much we as a race have responded to this pandemic. I think it's absolutely outstanding what we have right across the world in terms of responding to changes, not just in education, but every other dimension of life. It is really heartening to see how we as a people have responded. So I think all of us should take a lot of hope. So now to move on to more difficult areas. So the loss of Erasmus is quite significant. The program is about 45 million euros to a year in the UK. And the replacement scheme will be of lower value. So it's £105 million, and that includes the running costs. So the amount of money we will have to spend on mobility, at least in the next 12 months, will be less than we would have normally. We still have some run-out money from Erasmus. The other side of it, of course, is just funding the mobility of UK students. Erasmus, of course, was a multilateral scheme, so you always have money to bring in students. And so the expectation is that will go to other countries on exchange, and that will then depend upon their respective regimes where they've got students, as the Congo program has. But of course, I'm not sure the UK was originally a part of the Congo program. No, it wasn't. So we may have to think that. The big difference between the two schemes, however, is hard costs. And so when we look at Erasmus, and even we look at mobility in general, it has always been focused on, it's been availed of by people who are privileged, generally white, and it was not like spreading itself evenly. And of course, one of the big messages, and I know this is a challenge in parts of the world, particularly in the US, is the whole idea about leveling up. Is everyone benefiting from globalization? And I suppose if there's any explanation of encouraged towards Brexit in this country, it was that there was a sense of dislocation. So the government is very committed to that. And so the scheme is targeted at students from like minority ethnic program areas. It's targeted at white working class, significantly the most underrepresented in higher education in the UK, as well as people of disabled and people with special education. So that's to be welcome, particularly for universities like Nottingham Trent, where we are heavily committed to this. We have one of the largest cohorts of low-income students in this country. We are the largest UK recruiter of students, and we are one of the largest recruiters of students from disadvantaged backgrounds. So for us, it is a fantastic opportunity to build on the work we have been doing to try to support students from disadvantaged backgrounds available. And the scheme is also beneficial in that it allows more short-term mobility, and we know that's crucial if you're trying to get disadvantaged backgrounds to avail of. And I've already mentioned the benefit of oil. So the employment scheme, less money, better targeted students with disadvantaged background, which from a selfish perspective of our university is a good thing.
Great, thank you for that optimism. LPU has already been receiving quite a few groups of students from UK, and I think that flow will continue, and we'll continue to give you brilliant experiences in LPU. Professor, another question to you is that, you know, with online education gaining popularity, and even otherwise with respect to regular education also, there have been a lot of service providers from outside the universities. One, there are two players in this. One, the universities themselves. LPU might go for, you know, online content of another institution, or the content might be offered by another business firm. But it is normally said that those who provide content, the content providers, are not, they don't feel accountable for the learning outcomes of the students. Now, to what extent is that true? And is there a way we can kind of improve this situation? And how can this online content delivery be improved? The impact of that can be improved. The learning outcomes can be improved.
Well, I think that very much depends on the contractual model and who is the customer here, and whether somebody is accountable to a customer. And I say that as somebody who, during lockdown, has completed all my naval tickets, my sailing tickets, to online learning, which are accredited by the Association. And of course, you know, they are an accountable organisation, and I'm contracting directly with them. If I'm not happy with the service I'm provided, I know where to go. I think the danger comes when universities start subcontracting their work with other agencies, and whether they have the enforcement mechanisms in place, and they have the checking mechanisms in place to ensure that the quality is of the appropriate level. Now, actually, at NTU, we've moved away from that model. We have decided that it's just too risky from a quality assurance perspective, and we don't engage in anything unless we are directly involved in the delivery, or at least a very high percentage of that. So we're putting quality assurance at the very top of the agenda. So I think that the big challenge around any of these things is whether you have the appropriate quality assurance mechanisms in place, and that must include national insurance, quality assurance, so that if an individual provider is stepping up to plate, business provider saying they're going to provide a service which is competing, let's say about universities, that they are held to the same quality standards that we do. And we've certainly seen failure there in the past, not necessarily around university, but particularly around further education skills, where in the last 20 years in the UK, we have had providers who have delivered some of these things, but very mixed results. Some have been excellent, others where there was very, very poor outcomes for the people who took part at large expense. making sure that you have the appropriate national quality assurance mechanisms to accountability, and then when you have places like universities, then also providing those assurances that they are acting as a service, since the hope these services, that they in turn are ensuring that the appropriate quality assurance.
Thank you very much, Professor Yan, for your very valuable inputs. Thank you so much. May I request Dr. Susan Zimmerman to kindly take the next couple of questions. She is the State University, she's the Provost, State University of New York, Cobleskill, US. So, Dr. Susan, how do you believe the lab research, particularly in the STEM disciplines, is getting affected due to COVID? And is there a way the university is trying to mitigate the problem, or you have certain plans which are going to be rolled out to redeem the situation?
Thank you for that question, and thanks very much for the invitation to be involved in this panel. And I want to thank Rocky Professional University for their support, as well as the Honorable Minister for Education. I'm reminded of how interconnected we all are as I sit on this panel with our colleague from the University of Newcastle, where I completed my graduate work as an international student. It brings things full circle for me. The question of these deferrals in the STEM areas has been one that our faculty have really been focused on from the start of the situation. It felt a year ago as if research came to a sudden and abrupt halt. And very quickly, as a campus, was really trying to figure out how to continue to conduct research in laboratories that required reduced capacity, where we had our resources were stretched. And we found that it wasn't an issue that we had to deal with alone, because we are part of the university system with 64 campuses and system leadership. That this was something that the whole system was very concerned about. And so, obviously, there was a pivot by our faculty. And I want to say that this is undergraduate as well as graduate research. So, our faculty pivoted in terms of, trying to find ways to continue to engage students in research, obviously in more limited ways. Perhaps faculty were gathering data for students to analyze. We sent, some of our instructional support staff out into the field to collect data, to make sure that work could still continue. But I think the impact has come in a number of ways, and we're still continuing to address the issue. Obviously, in terms of advancing the research agenda in any of the disciplines, there's been a significant slowing, if you will, of the work. And that impacts, a university's competitive edge in terms of recruitment. It impacts the competitive edge in terms of gaining external funding for its work. But it goes beyond the individual university or system into the nation and of course, across the world. Students are missing out. Not only on the development of critical skills like data collection or analysis or teamwork or communication, but I think really importantly, students had been missing out on the important mentoring that occurs when the students have in that faculty research partnership. And I think that needs to be underscored. So we've really tried to develop strategies to address that as well. So I think the impact is significant, but we've seen, obviously, we've had to move from that halt to slowing down the research and then what those are opening significantly. I would say that it has opened up opportunities for us to partner internationally, and again, maybe in smaller pieces of research projects, but that's certainly been to us through the virtual platforms.
Wonderful. I mean, the last part which you spoke about, the international collaborations, whether it is in terms of research projects or in terms of knowledge exchange, How successful have those endeavors been? And any specific kind of, pitfalls or hurdles that you've experienced in, deriving effectiveness from those collaborations?
Yeah, and what we've noticed certainly is that it felt as though there's been an opening up, not just nationally, but internationally. Everyone going to move to remote platforms. It certainly has been much more accessible, developing these partnerships or building upon existing partnerships. And we kind of started there, building upon existing partnerships that we've had, but we've been able to build new partnerships, and it has been largely through foil. So I was very enthusiastic to hear your question about foil early on, because that has been one of the mechanisms really been able to utilize as a worldwide platform to be able to engage with other university partners. And so, what we've learned, and again, I think the initial thought that this research scientific calling, that we would have to be, engaged for an extended period of time, what we learned is that we can begin that work independently, we can connect remotely, at various times, and then we can, arrange for at a future date to come together, hopefully in person. So we try to approach it that way, so that it's not a forward-looking kind of situation, but that we can certainly take steps, to conduct research. This framing, this approach that we've taken has really given us a lot of confidence about research collaboration that we can continue to grow and that we can build.
Great, thank you. LPU has been very active in seeking international partnerships, and we also have certain good projects with Canadian universities, with a couple of other universities, and the results have been pretty good. Very efficient handling, but I think you already have some experience of COIL. I think that definitely needs to be, we will need your further guidance in implementing COIL. LPU has not experienced COIL so far, though I think over the telephone people have been exchanging, and over internet, yes, but not as a structured kind of a philosophy of the institution, and I'm sure in times to come this trend will improve. Thank you very much, Professor Susan Zimmerman, for your very valuable inputs. Thank you indeed. May I now request Ms. Bahua Chadwick, the Associate Vice President International and Chief Executive Officer Global Operations, Thompson River University, Canada, to kindly take the last few questions. Ms. Bahua, what are the reasons? All of us are, especially the Canadian, the developed world universities are seeking a lot of international students. So what is the reason, beyond the commercial reasons, for seeking international students? One. Two, do you believe that the expectations with which the international students go abroad for higher education, do you think those aspirations, those expectations are getting adequately fulfilled?
Those are interesting questions. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to also point the appreciation to lovely professional university, to the Honorable Minister and Chancellor for hosting this conference and inviting us to be here. As I mentioned, these are interesting questions. First of all, the university's motivation that you're asking for enrolling international students, and I truly believe it can be complex and perhaps also diverse. It is true that some do, which professors really more for educational, culture, humanitarian research, networking, and many other things. I can't really speak all universities, of course, but I would be happy to share our Riverside University with them. I guess this principle, we have a principle for international students. We are a young comprehensive public university located in the interior of the western Gulf of British Columbia, Canada. While we are among offering diverse programs, technology, business, science, humanity, law, our students would learn and experience that this is part of culture of studying abroad. And we face a lot of challenges to get through it. And we're not as successful as we wish in that aspect of studying itself. But we're not only to develop global competencies for our students to be successful. And we also know that one of the best ways to develop competence is through experience. And there's something about. But part of being able to encourage our students to study abroad activity. Well, solution is quite forward to campus. So who better than international students from the world ambassador culture and to collaborate with our students and faculty. We know that international students bring diverse culture and worldview to our university, which challenges thinking and thought processes. And as a result of that, professional kind of education, website learning, teaching and learning, we're encouraged. To work with all students, domestic Canadian students and international students. So I would say that international students also provide books to us to understand our academic and infrastructure. And which enables us to do things that we probably otherwise wouldn't do. So I also want to share another motivation we have for students is training and skill development for our regional and international colleges. Canada is a large country, declining and aging population, and we have a workforce shortage. So what this problem is international students will stay here in Canada on graduation, and they really excellent future citizens for Canada. So these are just a few of our universities operation to attract international students. Obviously, students have different motivations for coming here. And of course, the main thing for them is being able to as well, getting experience through education. So I think, and I do believe we can provide a good community that for our students.
Well, I think one major motivation of a lot of people, especially from developing countries, moving to Canadian institutions would definitely be permanent immigration prospects. So I'm sure that is turning to your advantage. But then moving forward, do you face any academic or ethical dilemmas with respect to international education in the context of COVID in particular, COVID-19? So has it created certain dilemmas on the academic front or on the ethical front for the academic institutions?
Yes, and I would definitely agree. So some dilemmas, maybe even just pre-pandemic, there are some in the context of international education. I would say, for example, one component is talent versus talent. So obviously, I talked about our organization here, why we want to attract international students. And we love to welcome this decade of migration to contribute to our economy. Now, the dilemma is, well, we're bringing that talent. whether in that skilled trade force, future citizens, what does that mean to their home countries? And is that a loss for them? Is that ethical? So that is whether during the pandemic or not. Now, pandemic, in the context of pandemic, I would say, I mentioned also earlier the importance of gaining global experience, which was travel from one destination to another. Now, in the context of pandemic, know that the spread of the virus is from people to people. From travel, that virus is spread. When it was traveling, we call virus. Now, but we know that we talked about the importance of with each travel from one destination to another, all that relating to experience. Well, to do something, you want to control virus. Yeah, but of course, there's a real connected with the vaccine. So in the meantime, we encourage local actors to can we make that meet within our local structures?
Is there a dilemma on the kind of academic evaluation front also? I mean, is there a compromise on that front?
It's more general. I would think it's more general.
Okay. With this, I think from my side, I'm done with the questions, and I must thank the very esteemed panel for being very patient and very elaborate and very precise with their answers. I don't know whether we have some people, other stakeholders. No, we don't have. So any final comments any panel member would like to make, which you think you have reserved for as the last comments? Some very valuable thoughts which have not been, which have not come out for the benefit of the participants. You're free to take a couple of minutes on that. Well, if not, then with this, we come to the end of this. And I must very profusely express my personal thanks and gratitude to all the panel members for being very patient with my questions and for doing full justice to the benefit of all the stakeholders of higher education. And I'm sure this collaboration that we have initiated will continue in times to come to our mutual benefit. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, everybody. Really interesting. Good stuff.
Hi, good evening everyone, and thank you for being with us in this particular conference, which was such an interesting conference during a very, very unprecedented time of COVID. We had a very, very good deliberation by all the panelists and all the speakers who were present there. So I want to thank everyone who made this conference such a successful conference. And I want to thank first of all our Honorable Minister of Education, Dr. Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank ji, who has consented to be part of this conference. And it just shows that when the Minister of Education of India decides to be part of the International Collaborative Conference, it shows the commitment of the country to move in a very progressive international direction. So thank you, Honorable Minister, for being part of this conference. I also want to thank Mr. Ashok Mittal, the Chancellor of Lovely Professional University, who believed in the Division of International Affairs team and allowing us to do interesting conference on this topic. And I also want to thank all the panelists, especially Dr. Stacey Faraway, Pro Vice Chancellor, International, La Trobe University, Australia, Professor Lawrence Patchett, Pro Vice Chancellor, University of Canberra, Australia, Professor Seth Koning, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Curtin University, Australia, Mr. James Aldridge, Vice Provost, International, Lakehead University, Canada, Professor Lizor Semio, Vice Director of Academic Affairs, European University, Cyprus. He has also sent us a nice video to promote this conference. Thank you for that. I also want to thank the next panelist, Mr. Jack Sullivan, Director, English Language Program for University of Pennsylvania, USA, Dr. Tony Travagliano, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Global Engagement and Partnership, the University of Newcastle, Australia, Professor Cillian Ryan, Pro Vice Chancellor, International, Nottingham Trent University, UK, Dr. Sue Zimmerman, Provost, State University, New York, USA, Ms. Bahua Chadwick, Associate Vice President, International and Chief Executive Officer, Thompson River University, Canada. Thank you all the panelists for sharing your thoughts with us. And also thank you, Dr. Laviraj Gupta and Dr. Modi, for moderating both the sessions. And I don't want to leave this stage before thanking Ms. Supriya Matthew, who has been organizing this whole event along with her team. So thank you, Supriya, for arranging such a international conference in such a short time. I know we've been discussing about it for quite some time, but good to see it culminating in such a positive note. So thank you, everyone. Stay safe. I know we have overshoot the time that we proposed for it, but with looking at the deliberation, I think it was worth it, and definitely having the Minister of Education with us made it absolutely delight. Thank you, and stay safe. Have a great evening, day ahead. Thanks a lot.